Keep calm. 102 pieces of wisdom to find peace, stop overthinking, and carry on with your life. Written by Nick Trenton, narrated by Russell Newton. Chapter 1. The Power of Considering Alternative Explanations. Most misunderstandings in the world could be avoided if people would simply take the time to ask, what else could this mean? Shannon L. Alder. In the hustle and bustle of our daily lives, it's all too easy to fall into the trap of quick judgments and assumptions. Misunderstandings abound, and they often stem from a lack of willingness to explore alternative perspectives and intentional pauses. Shannon L. Alder's wise words urge us to pause and ask ourselves, what else could this mean? Most of us are good at asking, what could this mean? But we stumble when we latch on to the first or only answer to the question. By simply asking what else an event could mean, we can unlock a world of possibilities and maintain a balanced perspective even in the face of negative events, and create a healthy space between our experiences and reactions. In that space, we can grow, fix problems, create, or become the better version of ourselves we know we can be. Ask, what else could this mean? When faced with a negative event or an ambiguous situation, our default response is often to latch on to the most convenient or self-serving explanation. And the most convenient explanation, by the way, isn't necessarily one that helps us, accurately reflects the world, or makes us feel good. It's just the one that fits the frame of mind we're already occupying. If your frame of mind is blind panic and terror when someone points a knife at you, you'll probably decide it means they want to kill you. But it's only when you ask, what else could it mean, that you're able to see that they're just offering you a tool to help you cut the carrots for the soup you're both making. Let's consider a more everyday scenario. A close friend cancels plans at the last minute. What does it mean? If you're in a particular mindset, it's proof that nobody loves you. But instead of jumping to conclusions and assuming they no longer value your friendship, we could entertain the possibility that they might be facing unexpected personal challenges, or simply need some time for self-care. They could have an emergency on their hands or be ill, who knows? They could be making soup. In moments of criticism or rejection, it's easy to internalize these experiences as reflections of our worth. Yet, by practicing the habit of considering alternative explanations, we can protect ourselves from blindly believing the worst possible interpretations. Maybe you're a total failure and about to get fired any minute now. Or maybe your boss has a point, and him pointing out that you were late that morning doesn't mean you're a bad human being. By incorporating the question, what else could this mean, into our daily lives, we nurture a habit of seeking multiple perspectives. This habit helps us transcend our initial reactions, fostering a more balanced and empathetic understanding of negative events. In turn, we can approach life with a greater sense of presence and embrace the possibilities that are beyond our immediate. Chapter 2. Sometimes you shouldn't keep looking within. A person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts, so he loses touch with reality and lives in a world of illusions. Alan Watts. Digital buzz and constant chatter, our world is awash with perpetual distractions, a cacophony of beeps and notifications. It's a place where the art of self-reflection often becomes a refuge, a sanctuary to which we retreat, seeking solace amidst the relentless noise. As the renowned philosopher Alan Watts astutely observed, An unbridled fixation on introspection can lead us astray, causing us to lose touch with reality and plunge headlong into a world of illusions. Striking the delicate equilibrium between delving into our inner selves and engaging with the external world is the cornerstone of a life marked by presence, reduced anxiety, and liberation from overthinking. Balancing introspection and external experiences. While introspection holds the key to understanding our motivations, fears, and dreams, an excess of it can pull us out of reality's embrace. Just like a pendulum, swinging too far toward constant self-analysis can lead to a life spent outside the vibrant tapestry of the present moment. We become ensnared in our thoughts, trapped in a maze of our own making. It's a paradox. The more we dwell on our thoughts, the more detached we become from the very experiences that give rise to those thoughts. Imagine a child tells his dad he's afraid of a monster under their bed. The dad, trying his best, sits down and addresses the problem. He makes a compelling, rational argument for why there couldn't logically be a monster. And even if there was, there are a dozen contingency plans for what they'd do to manage it. The dad goes on to explain the boy's deepest, unconscious psychological fears, and how the monster is just an abstract symbol of the unknown. The boy and his dad talk long into the night, for hours, about the philosophical and metaphysical ramification of the monster myth and what it represents both politically and culturally, and how they are going to rewrite that fear narrative, reclaim the word monster, and release blocked psychic and libidinal energy and channel it into the tasks of mastery that reflect the child's developmental crises. The child is still afraid of what's under the bed, though. The next day, his mom impatiently tells the boy to just look under the bed himself. Is there a monster there? I guess not. Thinking helps us solve problems. Overthinking is a problem. Consider a scenario where you've spent hours dissecting a conversation you had with a colleague. You've parsed every word, every nuance, to the point where the actual moment has blurred into a haze of overthinking. Meanwhile, your colleague has moved on, engrossed in new conversations and experiences. The excessive introspection, while well-intentioned, has distanced you from the tangible world. From the last Chapter 3, Action Matters. Because we feel vulnerable about the future, we keep trying to solve problems in our head. David Carbonell. As David Carbonell insightfully notes, our discomfort with the unknown often leads us down a path of incessant problem-solving within the confines of our minds, except it's not real problem-solving at all. We grapple with hypothetical scenarios, concoct intricate plans, and endlessly attempt to predict the unpredictable. But what if instead of this fruitless endeavor, we could find a way to be comfortable with vulnerability and embrace the uncontrollable nature of the future? Embracing vulnerability and uncertainty. Imagine releasing the tight grip of control you've exerted over every possible outcome. Visualize that moment when you take a deep breath, loosen your grip on the steering wheel, and allow the winds of uncertainty to guide your course. It's a shift that requires not blind surrender, but rather a deep trust in your innate ability to adapt and navigate whatever challenges come your way. Think back to a time when life veered unexpectedly off course. Perhaps it was a sudden job loss or a surprise opportunity that turned your carefully planned trajectory on its head. Remember how, despite the initial shock, you managed to recalibrate your direction and forge ahead? In those moments, you tapped into an unexplored reservoir of resilience and creativity. By relinquishing control, you opened yourself to unforeseen possibilities, finding solutions you might never have imagined had you clung to the illusion of total mastery. Remember our overthinking backpacker? While meticulous planning is essential, there comes a point when the trail is no longer predetermined, and each step brings new challenges. By learning to adapt to changing weather, unexpected detours, and the occasional wrong turn, the backpacker develops a heightened sense of resourcefulness. It's this cultivated ability to thrive amidst the uncertainty that not only defines the essence of the journey, but also holds the potential to transform the traveler's perspective on life itself. To be comfortable with vulnerability and uncertainty doesn't mean forfeiting responsibility or direction. It's a matter of acknowledging that no amount of preconceived planning can predict every twist and turn ahead. As you stand at the intersection of anticipation and the unknown, remind yourself that it's your capacity to flex, pivot, and adapt that truly defines your journey. From thought to action. Sometimes our brain gets caught up in what if and traps itself in endless brainstorming. As we contemplate potential scenarios, our mind's landscape becomes cluttered. What if I ask her out and she says no? What if she laughs in my face? What if she already has a boyfriend? What if I offend her? What if I embarrass myself? All the above questions are useless. That's because all they can do is invite conjecture and guesswork. There is one. Chapter 4. What are you really afraid of? Man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. Epictetus. Picture this. A serene lake surrounded by lush greenery, reflecting the clear blue sky above. You sit by the water's edge, basking in the tranquility of the moment. Yet, amidst this peaceful scene, your mind starts to wander. Suddenly, you're engulfed by thoughts of potential job loss, strained relationships, and uncertain futures. These are what Epictetus calls imagined anxieties. You are in heaven, but your mind makes you think you're in hell. Questioning unbounded fears. Fear has a function. Your ancestors used it to help identify and flee from genuine threats to their survival. For example, the quintessential saber-toothed beast rustling in the grass. Your body doesn't know the difference between a thing and a thought about a thing, however. Fast forward to modern-day life. You could be sitting quietly in an armchair, and when you read about a fictional saber-toothed beast, you experience the exact same physiological reaction as your ancient ancestors did, except it's not real. Modern man's ability to think and imagine, then, is also an ability to terrify himself for no good reason. Take, for instance, the job interview you're anticipating next week. Your mind concocts a narrative of stumbling over your words, being rejected, and facing a bleak future. Yet, in reality, the interview is still in the future, and your current anxiety serves only to cloud your present moments. Or consider the social event you're dreading. You fear awkward conversations and judgment. But aren't you projecting yourself into a future that may not align with what truly transpires? By questioning the basis of these imagined anxieties, we can unravel their grip on us. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this feared outcome will happen? Is there another, more balanced perspective I could adopt? A big question is, Am I reacting to this situation or my thoughts about this situation? Asking this means you're free to wonder if there may be a more useful way to think about things. Embracing present action. Sometimes we also find ourselves entangled in the rhythm of anticipation, yearning for a future that sparkles with our dreams. Yet, in our fervent fixation on the horizon, we risk missing the enchantment of the steps we take today. Epictetus's words hold a mirror to our restless minds, revealing that our true struggles lie not in the tangible challenges that confront us, but in the mirage of anxieties we weave around them. Imagine the aspiring writer who dreams of penning a bestseller. Every keystroke carries the weight of imagined expectations, reviews, accolades, and the shimmering allure of fame. In this future-focused trance, the writer overlooks the beauty of Chapter 5. How to say yes, how to say no. You have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage pleasantly, smilingly, and non-apologetically to say no to other things. And the way to do that is by having a bigger yes burning inside. Stephen Covey. In the modern whirlwind of obligations, opportunities, and distractions, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. In these moments, Stephen Covey's wisdom is a guiding beacon in the sea of daily demands. How do we harness the power of this approach to create a life that aligns with our deepest desires? Defining your bigger yes. Defining your bigger yes is akin to settling your life's mission statement. It's about pinpointing the overarching goal that sparks your passion and excitement. This bigger yes is your compass, directing your energy toward endeavors that resonate with your values. Imagine you've been invited to join a new project at work, but you're already juggling multiple commitments. By defining your bigger yes, perhaps it's advancing in your career while maintaining a healthy work-life balance, you'll be able to evaluate whether this new opportunity propels you closer to or further from your desired destination. Without a clear vision, anxiety often finds a way to creep into our lives. We're haunted by doubts and second-guessing, constantly questioning if we're on the right path. But with a bigger yes in hand, those doubts have less of an impact on us. When deciding whether to commit to a social event or prioritize self-care, your bigger yes becomes a litmus test. Does this align with your greater purpose? Does it resonate with your priorities? Many of us feel uncomfortable saying no because, well, it sounds negative. We worry we're letting people down, missing out on opportunities, or being rigid or unreasonable. But when your decisions are guided by your bigger yes, the anxiety of uncertainty loses its grip. You think of it not as saying no to A, but saying yes to B. Each of us is human, and we only have finite resources, time, and energy. We cannot do everything. That means if we value some things, we have to place other things in second place. Take Jane, for example, a marketing professional with aspirations of launching her own consultancy. She defines her bigger yes as being an independent entrepreneur who empowers small businesses through strategic branding. When she's presented with the opportunity to lead a massive corporate campaign, she evaluates it against her vision. The lucrative offer might tempt her, but her bigger yes whispers that her heart belongs to fostering local entrepreneurship. With this clarity, she confidently declines the offer, knowing it takes her a step closer to her desired destination. In a world abundant with choices, knowing your bigger yes streamlines decision-making. It's the art of saying no without guilt or hesitation. Because Chapter 6, your inner voice helps you self-regulate. Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down at the turbulent waves crashing against the rocks below. Your heart races, your palms get sweaty, and an overwhelming sense of anxiety washes over you. But what if I told you that there's a simple technique, grounded in psychological research, that can help you find calm amidst the chaos? In a groundbreaking study titled Self-Talk as a Regulatory Mechanism, How You Do It Matters, conducted by Cross et al. In 2014, researchers delved into the fascinating realm of self-talk and its impact on our emotions and behaviors, particularly in the face of social stress. They discovered that the way we address ourselves internally during introspection can make all the difference in how we navigate distressing situations. The power of mental distance. When you find yourself dealing with anxiety or distressing situations, mentally step back and view the situation as if you were an external observer. Think of it as a mental zoom out button. This technique, known as self-distancing, involves shifting from first-person pronouns, I or me, to non-first-person pronouns, you, he, she, or even your own name. By doing so, you create psychological distance, allowing you to approach the situation with a more objective and detached perspective. So, instead of saying, I'm having a panic attack, I'm going to faint here on this cliff edge and everyone is going to see, you say, you've got this, Emily. You're experiencing some panic right now, but you're safe. You're not going to faint. You can probably tell the difference, right? The first feels so much more personal, threatening, and non-negotiable. The second makes the situation seem much more manageable somehow. Imagine you're preparing to give a presentation at work. The mere thought of it makes your heart race and your mind run through worst-case scenarios. Instead of getting trapped in the whirlwind of your emotions, step back and address yourself as if you were coaching someone else. All right, your name, you've got this. Remember to take deep breaths, speak clearly, and engage the audience. You've done your research, and you're well prepared. By employing this technique, you're giving yourself the space to see the situation from a different angle. It's like watching a movie of your life, rather than being lost in the script. This newfound perspective can diminish the intensity of your emotional response, helping you think more clearly and act with greater composure. Essentially, you've created psychological distance. You're no longer fused with scary or overwhelming thoughts. You're standing at some distance away from them, and that makes them easier to handle. Remember, anxiety narrows your focus so that when you're immersed in your own thoughts and feelings, you lose perspective. Self-distancing is your antidote to this tunnel vision. It empowers you to regain control. Chapter 7, Feeling Depressed? Be kind. Healing through helping, an experimental investigation of kindness, social activities, and reappraisal as well-being interventions, a collaborative effort by David R. Craig and Jennifer S. Chivens, is more than just a study. It's a compass pointing us toward a mental landscape that's less stormy and more serene, a terrain where the power of kindness and the act of helping others reigns supreme. While it may seem counterintuitive to some, helping others may turn out to be the most reliable way of helping ourselves. It could be that the corollary is also true. Relentless self-focus is the fast-track way to unhappiness. Acts of kindness as cognitive control. By shifting your attention toward helping others, you may experience improvements in your own mental well-being. It sounds nice, but why should this be the case? We've already seen that engaging actively with the present brings us out of our minds and out of endless, impotent rumination. Engaging in acts of kindness, however, can also serve as a form of cognitive control, allowing you to redirect your thoughts and emotions in a positive and constructive manner. It can be difficult to stay grounded and pragmatic when caught up in our own neuroses, but it's easier to see the way forward when it comes to other people. Kindness, then, is simple. Consider the story of Emily, who, amidst her own struggles with anxiety, started writing letters of encouragement to hospital patients. As she penned heartfelt words to uplift others, she found herself less entangled in her own anxious thoughts. Simply, all that anxious mental energy was put to some real use in the world. It was channeled and directed. Emily not only felt less alone, but she was distracting herself from useless ruminations, finding a purpose, and increasing her self-efficacy. So the next time you find yourself mired in negativity, extend a helping hand. It might just be the lifeline you need. You may find even more paradoxical benefit in giving to others what you most feel you lack. If you're lonely, volunteer to help with isolated older folks trapped indoors. If you're feeling unloved, work at the orphanage. If you're feeling directionless in life, offer to coach wayward teens at a summer camp. You get the idea. Consider the butterfly effect of kindness. When Daniel, a teacher dealing with chronic anxiety, decided to start a small scholarship fund for his students, he couldn't have foreseen the ripple of positivity it would create. Not only did he provide opportunities for his students, but he also experienced a remarkable shift in his own well-being. The act of contributing to others' futures acted as a magnetic force, pulling his attention away from anxious thoughts and directing it toward a brighter, altruistic focus. Remember, acts of kindness need not be grand gestures to yield transformative effects. You don't have to do something flashy or work with a major organization in an impoverished country. Chapter 8. The Good News in Bad News. In a world where we're bombarded with negative news headlines and distressing information at every turn, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and anxious. However, recent research conducted by Tel Aviv University's School of Psychological Sciences sheds light on an intriguing phenomenon that can help us navigate the turbulent seas of negativity and regain control of our emotions and cognitive abilities. The study suggests that repeated exposure to negative events can have a surprising impact on our mood and cognitive functions. Building resilience through negative visualization. Imagine this scenario. You wake up one morning to a barrage of unsettling news headlines, and your mood takes a nosedive. Your mind races with worst-case scenarios, envisioning a bleak future filled with challenges, losses, and setbacks. Sound familiar? This is where the first tip comes into play: negative visualization. Instead of shying away from these distressing thoughts, embrace them. Picture those potential challenges vividly, as if they were unfolding before your eyes. By repeatedly imagining these realistic negative scenarios, you're doing more than just acknowledging their existence. You're taking control of your emotional response. The Tel Aviv University study reveals that initially, exposure to negative information can indeed put you in a bad mood and impair your cognitive abilities. Through repetition, however, something remarkable happens. These negative scenarios begin to lose their emotional grip on you, resulting in an improved mood and enhanced cognitive performance. In other words, you are becoming desensitized to them. Naturally, this study isn't permission to consume hours of mood-damaging online content, most of which is not necessary or beneficial. Rather, it's pointing to the fact that sometimes our anxiety makes us mentally pull back from certain situations we've convinced ourselves are unbearable. But by strenuously avoiding and fearing this fear, we only give it more power. Imagine you are eaten up with worry over your marriage. Things aren't great, and you are unable to sleep at night, stewing over the thought that your spouse is going to file for divorce, leaving you sad, alone, and a little poorer to boot. This thought is so unbearable that the more you stress about it, the more it seems to hurt, and the more you stress about it. Unfortunately, just lying in bed, ruminating on "what if I get divorced" over and over is not likely to have therapeutic effects. Rather, face the fear head on. Typically, you'll notice that your mind stops at a certain point, but push it onward and follow it through. This will help you engage with and eventually counteract catastrophizing. What if I get divorced? Well, so what if you do? I'll be sad and all alone, and it'll leave me destitute, too. Chapter 9. Mindful movement lowers stress. Cultivating mental clarity. While on a tranquil walk through the woods, you're surrounded by lush greenery, the gentle rustling of leaves, and the joyful chirping of birds. Instead of your mind being consumed by your never-ending to-do list or the stress of upcoming deadlines, you consciously choose to focus on the present moment. Your senses awaken as you feel the cool breeze on your skin, hear the rhythmic sound of your footsteps, and catch the subtle scent of nature in the air. This is what we mean when we talk about mindfulness in action. A recent study found that individuals, especially college students, experienced reduced stress and negative emotions when they practiced mindfulness while moving, such as walking. By immersing themselves in the present, they were able to get out of their heads and into their bodies. The next time you're walking to a meeting, or even just from your car to your workplace, try this. Focus on your breath and the sensation of each step. Notice the sights and sounds around you. Feel the ground beneath your feet. This intentional act of presence can help clear your mind and provide a respite from the mental chatter. If, or shall we say, when your mental chatter erupts again, that's no problem. Just notice it, take a breath, and bring your attention back to what's going on in this very moment, right now. Tell yourself that whatever it is, it can wait. All those worries and thoughts will still be there when you return from your walk, if you still want to chew them over. Use your 5 senses to help anchor and ground you. When you catch your mind going off the rails, go back to your senses. What can you smell? The clean, sweetish scent of autumn leaves on a cold ground? Rain coming? Look around you. Notice the subtle shades of different colors all on the same leaf, or the way the light is dappled at the foot of a tree. What sounds can you hear? Listen even more closely. What can you hear when you really listen? What does it actually feel like to walk, to stand upright, to have the solidity of the ground underneath your feet? Pluck a stem of grass. How does its stalk feel against your fingertips. Yes, you can even enlist taste on your walk. Have you ever chewed on the end of a piece of sweet grass? What if you brought a little snack with you and savored it one bite at a time? The senses go beyond just 5, though. Try to feel the quality of the air and light around you. Get a sense of being inside a landscape. Become aware of how the elements are interacting with one another and how you yourself are one of those elements moving with the flow. Slow and intentional movement magic. There's power in embracing deliberate, unhurried movements while staying tuned into your breath. This dynamic duo sends a clear signal to your nervous system, activating the parasympathetic response, aka the rest and digest mode. In our turbocharged lives, it's easy to get caught up in the sympathetic fight or flight mode. And that Chapter 10. Bothered by negative, unwanted thoughts? Just throw them away. Recent research conducted at Ohio State University delves into the captivating realm of thought management, yielding enlightening insights. The truth is, not all thoughts are created equal. Some are useful, some are partially useful, and some are just plain old garbage. If you have a garbage thought that you can't seem to get rid of, this chapter has some tips for detaching and getting on with your life. Transforming thoughts into tangible entities. The first tip, which revolves around the practice of writing down negative thoughts, is a simple yet profoundly effective strategy for managing our mental landscape. This technique involves externalizing those troublesome thoughts by transferring them from the swirling depths of our minds onto a tangible medium, such as a piece of paper or a digital note. Again, we see the power of creating psychological distance and detaching ourselves from harmful thoughts. By physically manifesting these thoughts, we create perspective and objectivity. During my teenage years, I embarked on a creative journey by writing a manuscript that I hoped would someday become a published novel. As is often the case with creative endeavors, however, I frequently found myself grappling with intense self-doubt. It was during these moments that I felt my manuscript would never be good enough, and this persistent negativity threatened to undermine my passion for writing. Then, I discovered the power of externalization through writing. One day, as I sat in my dimly lit room, doubting the worth of my manuscript, I decided to put pen to paper. I started jotting down every self-critical thought that plagued me. It was as if I was transferring the weight of my doubts from my mind onto the page before me. As I saw my negative thoughts in black and white, something transformative happened. I saw the thoughts, now outside of myself. They were pretty rotten. Had I really been carrying all that around my whole life? Once the thoughts were out there, it seemed so much easier to engage with them. After all, they were just words, whereas in my head, they had felt like absolute objective reality. I took my pen to the words themselves and realized I could edit them in exactly the same way as I had edited my own manuscript. I took a red pen and went to work correcting them. Actually, after a few minutes, I had a breakthrough. Nothing that I had written on the paper had any value. There was nothing to edit. It was all garbage. I crumbled up the piece of paper and threw it away. I began to view my manuscript more objectively. I realized that the harsh critiques I'd been subjecting myself to were just that, self-imposed and unnecessarily harsh. By externalizing these thoughts, I could scrutinize them from a distance. I noticed patterns in my thinking, like my tendency to magnify flaws and underestimate the strengths of my work. Those thoughts popped back up, but I no longer took them as seriously. What are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be in the bin? Chapter 11. Take that leap. Do something. Nothing diminishes anxiety faster than action. Walter Anderson. Now let's turn our attention to the profound wisdom of Walter Anderson as our guiding star. His insights illuminate a simple truth. As we take tangible steps toward our dreams, not only do we evade the pitfalls of procrastination, but we also release the tight grip of anxiety that's been holding us hostage. Think of it this way. Thought and action are two mutually exclusive modes and cannot occupy one entity at the same time. If you're acting, you're not thinking. If you're thinking, you're not acting. This is why people say things like, I was terrified at first, but once we got started, it was all okay. And I even started to enjoy it after a while. Creating a positive feedback loop. Imagine for a moment the classic quest for better health. When you commit to regular exercise and healthy eating, you embark on a transformational journey. Your body begins to change, and you start to feel good. Each workout or nutritious meal becomes proof that you are in charge of your health, and that you can take control and do better, one choice at a time, one day at a time. Alex dreamed of becoming a writer, but she was initially plagued by self-doubt. She questioned whether becoming a published author was merely a distant fantasy. She questioned a lot, actually. Whether she had any real talent, whether print media was dead, whether people would make fun of her, whether to write YA fiction or work on her first love, poetry. But Alex was able to see that after all this worry, one thing was not getting done: writing. She decided that all she would focus on was writing. That was all. She committed to writing at least 300 words a day, rain or shine. She ignored all the other noise in her head. As time unfolded, those words blossomed into articles and essays, much like a garden flourishing under the gentle sunlight. And then, the moment of truth arrived when Alex's work got published and accolades poured in. Did she immediately win a Nobel Prize and become a millionaire? No, of course not. But she kept on taking action day after day, and her writing career developed. One thing is for sure. Even if she only made modest advances, she still went infinitely further than she would have by just sitting at home, paralyzed, unable to do more than worry. Remember, if you want to be the hero of your story, then action has to be your superpower. Diminishing your anxiety's power through action. Imagine telling anxiety, "Not today, my friend." Well, let me share a personal story with you. Back in the day, I harbored a fear of starting my own business. I felt like tiptoeing through a field of uncertainty, but I made a conscious choice to confront this fear head-on. It wasn't all smooth sailing, but every successful business move felt like a small victory chipping away at my anxiety. Chapter 12. The wisdom of so what? I just give myself permission to suck. I find this hugely liberating. John Green. So, let me be your guide to the enigmatic world of John Green, the illustrious author of The Fault in Our Stars. His words aren't mere pearls of wisdom. They're like the playful nudges of a mischievous mentor, inviting us to embark on a journey less ordinary, a journey paved with the beautiful imperfections of life. Embracing intentional failure. Imagine this. A budding artist stands before a blank canvas. Instead of trembling at the thought of every brushstroke, they wield their brushes with an air of audacity. They're like a magician conjuring colors onto the canvas. They know deep down that not every stroke will be a masterpiece. Some might even resemble a surrealist's interpretation of spaghetti. But here's what matters. They're painting. They're doing it. They're not letting fear shape their lives. Let me introduce you to John. He's painfully shy and believes at a core level that rejection just might kill him. John wants more than anything to meet a nice girl and have a relationship, but he's petrified that women will reject him. He's taken all the advice dished out by dating coaches, but it only seems to make things worse. That's because underneath it all, their underlying message is just more of the same. Be confident, be slick, be cool. John discovers that the opposite is actually true. One day his friend asks him, "What are you even afraid of? So a woman turns you down. Big deal. The worst that can happen is that some girl out there thinks you're terrible. Who cares?" It's a light bulb moment for John. His trouble, he sees, is not that he's unable to be confident. It's that he's unable to be a failure. So he sets himself a task. He goes out one morning with one agenda: chat with at least 50 girls and deliberately get rejected by each of them. You'll recognize elements of desensitization in this plan to deliberately fail. But there's more. John goes out, chats with a few girls, and they all politely turn him down. Much to his surprise, it's nowhere near as awful as he always thought it would be. In fact, getting rejected quickly feels kind of boring and ordinary. Now, I'm not going to say that the 50th girl was so charmed she immediately fell in love with him. This isn't a rom-com, but I will say that in the weeks following this experiment, something changed in John. He had given himself permission to be imperfect, permission to not have everyone like him, permission to be a flawed human being with fears and weaknesses, permission to go out into the world and engage with it, even if it got a little scary at times. With this new mindset, he finds that he's more confident, more relaxed, and less fearful. And, you guessed it, it's this attitude that starts to make him more attractive to others, and a girlfriend isn't far behind. Women end up drawn to John, not because he's cool and confident. Chapter 13, The Past is Gone. What is the point of dragging up sufferings that are over, of being miserable now because you were miserable then? Seneca. Have you ever felt stuck in a cycle of revisiting old wounds and past mistakes? We've all been there. But here's a question to ponder. What's the point? Seneca reminds us that there's little benefit in dwelling on past pain to the point where it affects our current happiness. Instead, Seneca encourages us to shift our focus to the present moment and the actions we can take now to improve our current circumstances. There's a funny saying that goes, "I can't be happy until my parents treated me better as a child." It's a nonsense statement that highlights the futility of stewing over what literally cannot be changed. The Stoics were famous for their clear-headed understanding of the difference between what can be changed and what cannot. Any dwelling on what cannot be changed is just a recreational misery, and it takes away energy that could be more fruitfully directed at something you could change. In practical terms, it means acknowledging our past experiences without letting them define or dictate our present emotions and choices. It's a call to release the weight of yesterday's burdens and embrace the potential and opportunities of today. By doing so, we can cultivate a more mindful, purposeful, and contented existence. Releasing the past. Have you ever found yourself lost in the maze of past regrets and mishaps, replaying them like a broken record? Trust me, I've been down that rabbit hole too, and it's a bit like trying to catch smoke with a butterfly net. I begin asking questions that are literally unanswerable. Why me? Why is life so unfair? Why did I do X when I could have done Y? Why can't this be easier? I heard someone once say that Y should be an acronym for won't help you. Take a look. I was bullied relentlessly in high school. Why do people like that always get away with it? What is an appropriate response to the above? There is no real answer because this is not a real question. It's just an invitation to ruminate and go down a negative rabbit hole. They get away with it because the teachers don't care, that's why. Let's be realistic. They're not getting paid enough to care, so they turn a blind eye. And parents don't want to rock the boat, so the whole thing's set up against the kid being bullied. I suppose it's a good lesson in a way, because when you grow up, the adult world is just as full of bullies. And there's just one long line of bullies after the first one, each of them doing whatever they want with impunity. So, we started with a single incident of bullying in the past, which is, let's remember, over, and extended that bad feeling to include all teachers, everywhere, at all times, all adults, the entire workplace, and basically 100% of humanity with everything in it, past, future, and for all time. Not to mention that with this mental filter on, you swiftly ignore the... Chapter 14, Drop the Blame. When we feel bad, we often automatically decide that either we are bad or another person is bad. Both of these moves cause damage and distort the truth, which is that we are all navigating difficult conditions the best we can, and we all have a lot to learn and unlearn. Dean Spade. Compare the following. 1. I feel hurt. 2. You hurt me. Take a moment to think about the differences between the two sentiments above. We often find ourselves caught in a blame game. Something is wrong, so we look for the person who did it, acting like detectives, eagerly assigning fault to the nearest suspect, be it ourselves or an unwitting bystander. When the going gets tough, we tend to slap labels on ourselves or others in a bid to make sense of our own experiences. If there's a victim, there's got to be a villain, right? If you're caught in anxious rumination, try to let go of the need to find someone who is responsible. Remind yourself that even if you do, blaming them, or even punishing them, brings you closer to what you really desire. Instead, focus on the present, focus on solutions, and focus on what you can do here and now to make things better. That means resisting the urge to wallow in self-recrimination, but also the urge to get trapped complaining about others as getting a little too much enjoyment out of being the victim. Your unrealistic expectations. First, let's hit the brakes before we impulsively leap to conclusions about our inherent virtue or vice. Life is often way, way more complicated than that. Let me share a personal story. I once found myself ensnared in the intricate web of self-doubt and blame after a project at work took an unexpected nosedive. I was poised to cast myself as the villain in this unfolding drama. It took a lot of introspection to finally gain some clarity. I took a deliberate breath and reached for my journal. I meticulously began documenting the details of the situation that had left me feeling so confused and upset. I listed the steps I had taken along the winding path that had led to this challenging crossroads. This practice enabled me to objectively assess the nature of my actions, discerning whether they had truly fallen within the sphere of my influence. Upon careful reflection, I recognized that my choices had indeed played a role, but not all of them were bad. Gradually, I turned black and white thinking into shades of gray. I asked myself some key questions. What was under my control in the past? What is under my control right now? What can I no longer do anything to change? What can I do right now to improve the situation? What do I need to forgive in myself and others? What lesson can I learn from all this? What do I need to do now to move on? In other words, instead of fault, think in Chapter 15, Needs versus Wants. Distinguish between real needs and artificial wants, and control the latter. Mahatma Gandhi. We reside in a world where we're bombarded daily with messages clamoring for more, and it's all too easy to get swept away. By embracing Gandhi's wisdom, you can master the art of distinguishing between your genuine needs and the glittering nonsense that disguises itself as need. By developing a mature discernment about what is and isn't necessary, you can also teach yourself to surf through waves of your cravings. Artificial wants versus real needs. Think of your life as a ship embarking on the boundless expanse of existence. The sustenance of your well-being, akin to the cargo aboard this vessel, hinges upon a precarious equilibrium. Within this cargo, you'll find your authentic needs: sustenance, shelter, water, and human connections. There are also fundamental provisions that not only sustain your journey, but ensure its smooth sailing. In contrast, there exists another facet of this cargo: the artificial desires. This is the excess baggage heaped upon your vessel by society, relentless advertising, and the pressures of peers. These desires can manifest as material possessions, symbols of status, or the relentless pursuit of external validation. These superfluous desires, however enticing, can encumber your voyage, rendering your ship sluggish and susceptible to turbulence or sinking. Consider a luxury car. It's expensive. It's sexy. It's glossy and high-end. But how much of that glamour genuinely serves a purpose? Will it truly elevate your well-being? Or is it merely an artificial craving fanned by societal expectations? Now, imagine all the worry and anxiety that comes from having that car. It needs constant maintenance. If it breaks down, they have to order special replacement parts from Germany that cost the same as a small second-hand car. And a place to park it so it's safe. And you're constantly stressed that the car wash is going to damage the special paint finish. This is not to mention the cost of buying or renting it. But what am I supposed to do? I need a car, right? Well, that may be true. But do you need that car? Here's a simpler explanation for when need tips over into want. Let's say you have a glass on a table and you're thirsty. Someone pours you a drink of water. A half glass is great and definitely welcome. Still, it would be nice to have a full glass so your thirst is completely quenched. So you ask the person to pour some more. They pour a full glass. That's great. But they continue pouring. The water reaches the top rim and then overflows. They keep pouring. Pretty soon, you've got an enormous mess on the countertop, and they won't stop pouring. The excess water doesn't quench your thirst. Chapter 16. Cultivating Emotional Discernment. Stoicism is about the domestication of emotions, not their elimination. Nassim Nicholas Taleb. The Stoics get a bad name. Their philosophy isn't about putting your feelings in a dungeon somewhere and pretending they don't exist. It's more like turning them into valued house guests. Instead of chasing your anger down the hallway with a broom, you're sipping tea together in the living room, discussing the matter like civilized adults. So, in this journey of emotional domestication, we're armed with two powerful tools: emotional transmutation and emotional anticipation. These are like the handy gadgets in your emotional toolkit, helping you navigate the daily roller coaster of life with a little more grace and humor and a lot less chaos. And it's not about emotional suppression. Emotional transmutation. All right, let's talk about emotional transmutation. It's like the alchemy of emotions. Imagine you're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting, and your patience is slipping away faster than ice cream on a hot summer day. It's tempting to honk your frustration at the poor car in front of you, but hold on. There's a stoic trick here. Instead of turning into a horn-honking banshee, consider the root of your anger. It might not be the traffic itself. It's more likely the fact that you're now the fashionably late guy. So here's where emotional transmutation swoops in. You take a deep breath, and instead of erupting, you channel that anger into something productive. Maybe you strategize how to make up for lost time, or ponder over ways to make your daily commute less soul-crushing. Emotional transmutation is not about stuffing your feelings into a tiny emotional box. It's about getting creative with them. In our traffic jam scenario, it's turning road rage into a brainstorming session. The result? You not only cool the immediate emotional crisis, but also start setting the stage for better solutions down the road. Pun intended. One of the great things about this practice is that it makes you the boss of your own emotions. You're not at the mercy of anger, sadness, or frustration. You're the one pulling their strings. They're not pulling yours. This newfound control allows you to face life's curveballs with a calm, strategic demeanor, which, spoiler alert, often leads to better outcomes. Emotional anticipation. Now let's dive into the second Stoic gem, anticipating your emotional reactions. Just think of it as emotional rehearsal, a mental dress rehearsal for life's unexpected dramas. It's like buying emotional insurance before the storm hits, and it's got a way of making you more present and far less anxious. Stoicism suggests that we imagine the worst-case scenarios, the kind that would make a Shakespearean tragedy look like a walk in the park. It's not about becoming a doomsday prophet. Chapter 17. Remember, you're the master. What worries you masters you. John Locke. Knowing your worry. In the twisted corridors of our minds, worries often lurk incognito, playing puppet master with our emotions. In the moment, we confuse with these thoughts and ideas and forget that we're even having them. Perhaps by worrying, we feel as if we have some rudimentary control over a scary situation, but the truth is, worry is usually less our servant and more our master. Every minute we spend worrying is a minute we spend in the clutches of a passive, impotent, irrational, and ineffective mindset. Not to mention it just feels awful, right? The more we worry, the less able we are to solve problems, think creatively, enjoy ourselves, or notice opportunities. Imagine having to summon the courage for a heart-to-heart chat with a close friend about a sensitive issue. It's the kind of situation that has your stomach doing gymnastics. Instead of churning over all the details and possible outcomes, i.e., getting trapped in your worry, take a moment to just admit, hey, I'm kind of freaked out about this talk. Consider it a friendly wave to your own anxiety. Suddenly, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's just something that's currently in your awareness. Once you've given your worry a nod of recognition, the next act is vital. Shift your mental spotlight elsewhere. Dwelling on your worries is like binge-watching a never-ending reality show. There's no next episode button. You just automatically loop over to the next episode and the next and the next. Instead, consciously switch to a mental channel that brings you a sense of calm control. In the context of that nerve-wracking conversation, having acknowledged your worry, decide to switch gears. Make yourself a cup of tea, dive into a good book, or immerse yourself in that quirky hobby of yours. Can you do anything about the situation? If yes, then do it. If no, then forcefully put your mind on something else that is useful or enjoyable. If you catch your mind wandering to the conversation, double-check if this worry can be useful to you at all. Hey, am I forgetting to plan something? Is there something I'm missing here? Answer these questions for yourself, then move on. If you are truly prepared for the conversation and know what you want and need to say, for example, then imagine yourself literally thanking your brain, but also telling it that you no longer need its help and that you can handle things from here. This perspective means that you are always converting worry into something more useful. Either you're turning it into coping, accepting, and problem-solving, or you're using it to remind yourself to do something better with your time. Worrying isn't just about thinking. Let's move on to another tip. Worrying, as it turns out, is not a solo act confined to the mind. Instead, it's an intricate dance involving the mind, body, and life. Chapter 18. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Serenity is knowing that your worst shot is still pretty good. Johnny Miller. Our brains can sometimes be drama queens. We tend to go all Hollywood and imagine the worst possible scenarios, complete with total Armageddon and multiple feature-length disasters. For example, you've entered a competition, and in the lead-up, you're so nervous and stressed out that you start conjuring up all kinds of fatal outcomes, ones where you not only lose the competition, but are completely mocked and denounced by the judges, thrown out of the event entirely, and prevented from ever attempting that activity ever again. You imagine crowds of people pointing and laughing, or booing, or both, and your tendency to ask, what if, starts to culminate in some, shall we say, creative thinking? Welcome to the world of catastrophizing. It's easy to recognize when someone else is doing it, but when we do it, it can feel deadly serious. Say no to thinking the worst. One of the essential keys to finding peace in the midst of uncertainty is to avoid catastrophizing. In reality, life rarely plays out like a blockbuster disaster movie. That's the first thing to understand. Even if things don't go according to plan, even if you stumble, or even if you face a catastrophe, it's unlikely to be as disastrous as your mind might make it seem. The world won't crumble, and the sky won't fall. Even if you do trip and fall, you sometimes tend to forget that you invariably get up again afterward, and life goes on. This understanding is the first step toward finding peace amid uncertainty. Let me share a personal story as a writer. There have been countless moments in my writing journey where I've feared the worst. What if my ideas aren't good enough? What if people hate my work? What if I fail miserably? Catastrophic scenarios danced through my mind like overzealous actors on a Shakespearean stage. But when I pushed through those fears and wrote, even on my worst days, the outcomes weren't as catastrophic as my imagination had conjured. For instance, there was a time when I was stuck with writer's block, and every word I typed seemed like a disaster in the making. I worried that my writing was terrible and that I'd never get published. But I decided to keep writing anyway, even if it was poorly crafted. To my surprise, some of those rough drafts eventually turned into pieces I was proud of, and they found their way into the hands of readers who appreciated them. The catastrophic scenarios in my mind were far more dramatic than the reality I faced. The funny thing is, minor catastrophes did happen, and they still do. But by not endlessly stressing about them, I was actually able to face them, cope, take action where I could, and move on. This is the lie that catastrophizing tells you. Actually, it's two lies. That something utterly catastrophic is going to happen, and that you won't be able to cope. Real life can get gnarly, but usually, even on bad days, it's never 100%. Chapter 19. It all happens here in the present. No amount of anxiety can change the future. No amount of regret can change the past. Karen Salmonson. The future. That tantalizing, nebulous land of possibilities and uncertainties. It's natural for our minds to venture into its treacherous terrain, conjuring scenarios that range from utopian dreams to dystopian nightmares. It's a place where everything, anything can happen, where maybe we'll be different, maybe better, maybe worse, and where all our dreams might come true or die once and for all. But really, the future is, well, nothing. It's not real. It hasn't happened yet. It is impossible to live the future in the present. All we can do is use language to talk about the future. But this is as useful as trying to eat the word food. This is worth emphasizing. There actually is no way to think about the future. All you can really do is hypnotize yourself with words right here and now in the present. And then the future will arrive and be whatever it was going to be. But by the point where you're able to engage with it, it will simply be the present. Anxiety can't change the future. Let's dive deeper. Inspired by Salmonson's wisdom, we need to recognize that excessive anxiety about the future does not have the power to change it. It's a bit like sitting in a rocking chair, constantly moving, but never getting anywhere. Worrying about what's to come may give the illusion of control, but in reality, it's a futile exercise. The future unfolds on its own accord, regardless of our fretting and hand-wringing. Now let's put this into practical terms. When you're facing a major life decision, like changing careers, you may be haunted by thoughts of potential failure, financial instability, and what-ifs that keep you up at night. Here's the kicker. The more you dwell on these anxieties, the less equipped you are to make a well-informed decision. Why? Because instead of using your here and now present moment to do things like problem solving or planning, you used it to hypnotize yourself with words about things that don't actually exist. Anxiety can be a black hole, consuming your mental bandwidth and leaving you paralyzed. Let's imagine a scenario. Meet Alana, a dedicated professional who constantly worries about her work presentations. She envisions worst-case scenarios, stuttering through her slides, awkward silences, and disinterested stares from her colleagues. Actually, worse than that, she pictures wetting herself, passing out, slipping and falling in front of everyone. Each night, her anxiety takes her on a roller coaster ride of fear and self-doubt. But here's the thing. All that anxiety won't magically transform her into a presentation wizard. It won't do a single thing but make her feel sad. Recognizing this truth is the first step to change. In Chapter 20, just breathe. Slow breathing is like an anchor in the midst of an emotional storm. The anchor won't make the storm go away, but it will hold you steady until it passes. Russ Harris. Isn't it amusing how life can be so changeable, with its constant waves of unpredictability and those sudden emotional squalls? Think about the things that you were terrified of 10 or 20 years ago. Things don't quite look the same anymore, do they? Like waking up to a beautiful, calm morning. It's hard to remember the violent storm of the night before. Your emotional weather always changes. And what seemed, at age 15, like the worst thing in the world, barely makes a blip when you're 35 years old. Just as any seasoned sailor worth their weight in sea salt will insist, the secret to staying afloat in bad weather lies in having a reliable anchor. Grounding yourself with slow breathing techniques. First, when facing an emotional storm, employ slow breathing techniques as a powerful tool to ground yourself. Slow, deliberate breaths act as an anchor, helping you maintain stability and composure amidst turbulent emotions. Slow breathing serves as a life buoy for the turbulent waters of emotions. It's a simple, yet remarkably effective technique to regain your footing when you feel like you're being tossed about by the storm. I remember a particularly stressful day at work, where deadlines seemed to multiply like rabbits, and I was on the verge of losing my cool. It was during such a tempest that I discovered the magic of slow breathing. As my stress levels soared that day, I retreated to a quiet corner, determined to regain my composure. With each inhale and exhale, I consciously slowed down my breathing. Deep breath in, counting to 4. Slow breath out, counting to 6. Inhale. Exhale. Repeat. I felt like I was dropping an anchor in the chaotic sea of my thoughts. Gradually, the storm within me began to subside. The tight knot of anxiety loosened, and a sense of calm washed over me. That experience was a revelation. I realized that slow breathing wasn't just a theoretical concept, but a tangible lifeline in the tumultuous sea of emotions. By deliberately controlling my breath, I could exert control over my emotional state. It was as if I had discovered a secret superpower that allowed me to stay grounded when life's waves threatened to capsize me. Slow breathing became my go-to tool in times of emotional upheaval. Whether dealing with personal changes, conflicts, or even moments of overwhelming joy, I harness this technique to navigate the emotional roller coaster of life. It's like having a trusty anchor that I could drop whenever I needed to stabilize myself in the turbulent waters of existence. Embracing the temporary nature of emotions. Next, understand that emotions, like storms, are temporary. Chapter 21. Worry, but do it on your terms. Let's take a look at an enlightening study by Annika Dippel, Jos F. Broschot, and Bart Virkul that offers us valuable insights into the art of worry management. The researchers delved into 8 different studies, encompassing nearly 1,000 participants, primarily female. What did they uncover? Well, they stumbled upon a fascinating strategy: worry postponement, or stimulus control. Now, why is this worth our attention? This discovery sheds light on a simple yet potent approach to combat anxiety effectively, establishing regular and consistent patterns in our daily lives. Let's explore this innovative approach to worry management together with 2 everyday strategies. Managing your worry. First, develop worry awareness. It's like shining a light on the dark corners of your thoughts and becoming aware that you are, in fact, worrying. One effective way to do this is by keeping a worry log and then crafting a designated worry period. Let's delve into why this is important and how to make it work for you. Often, anxiety lurks in the background of our minds, like a shadowy figure we can't quite see clearly. We feel it, and it influences us, but we're not really aware of this influence and where it's coming from. By keeping a worry log, you bring these worries into the light. You become more aware of the specific triggers, patterns, and times when anxiety tends to creep in. Imagine you notice that most of your worries hit you like a tidal wave in the late afternoon or before bedtime. This is valuable insight. It tells you that these are the moments when anxiety has a stronger grip on your thoughts. Armed with this knowledge, you can prepare to confront these worries head on. Once you've identified the times when you're most prone to worry, it's time to establish a worry period. This is a designated time, place, and duration where you allow yourself to worry. In fact, you deliberately make yourself worry during this time. How's that for being in control? The key here is that you're in charge of when and how you engage with your worries. Choose a comfortable and quiet place for your worry period. Set a specific time, like 5 p.m., and allocate a fixed duration, say 15 minutes. During this time, give yourself permission to worry as intensely as you want about anything and everything. It's your worry time, after all. By isolating your worries to a particular time slot, you regain control over your thoughts. When worries pop up at other times, you can gently tell yourself, "Not now. I have my worry period later. Then I can worry as much as I like." This postponement reduces the impact of worries throughout the day, allowing you to focus on the present without being overwhelmed by anxiety. Goal-oriented worry reduction. Next, make it a goal to reduce worry rather than eliminate it entirely. Chapter 22. Find relief in ritual. According to a study conducted by researchers from Tel Aviv University, the key to reducing anxiety may be found in recognizing the significance of establishing consistent and regular patterns in our daily routines. At first glance, the idea might appear counterintuitive. How can something as commonplace as adhering to a routine contribute to anxiety alleviation? The answer, intriguingly, is rooted in our fundamental human need for structure and predictability. We flourish when there's a sense of order in our lives, when we can anticipate what lies ahead. Routines, in this regard, provide us with the vital framework we crave. They act as guiding beacons, diminishing the haze of ambiguity and unpredictability that often fuels our anxiety. Now, based on this study, let's explore 2 tips that can help you find relief in routines. Embracing consistency for anxiety reduction. One tip is to recognize the immense value of establishing regular and consistent patterns in your daily life. These patterns, also known as simply having routines, extend their calming influence to various aspects of our lives, including waking up and going to bed, meal times, exercise, and leisure activities. Imagine the act of waking up in the morning without a set routine. Each day you wake up at a different time, unsure of what awaits you. The lack of structure can lead to a sense of disorientation and increased anxiety. Now consider an alternative scenario. You establish a consistent wake-up time and a series of morning rituals. Perhaps you start your day with some light stretching or enjoy a cup of herbal tea. This routine becomes a reliable anchor. It communicates to your brain that the day is starting as planned, offering a sense of control and predictability. Over time, this simple morning ritual can significantly reduce morning anxiety and set a positive tone for the day ahead. Consistent mealtime routines can also wield a powerful influence. In a hectic life, meals are often rushed or skipped entirely. This erratic eating pattern can trigger physical and emotional stress. However, by carving out specific times for meals and adhering to them consistently, you create a structured, nourishing experience. Picture sitting down at the same time each day to savor your lunch, free from distractions, and relishing the flavors and textures of your food. This not only promotes healthier eating habits, but also provides a tranquil pause in your day, reducing overall anxiety. Exercise is another area where routines can make a substantial impact on anxiety reduction. Irregular workout schedules can lead to feelings of guilt or frustration when you miss a session. However, when you establish a consistent exercise routine, whether it's a morning jog, a yoga class, or evening weightlifting session, you build discipline and structure into your life. Chapter 23, Too stressed people means less stress. Does this scenario sound a bit familiar? You're about to give a high-stress presentation. Your heart is racing, your palms are sweaty, and your mind is racing with anxious thoughts. It feels like the world's weight is on your shoulders, and stress and anxiety are taking hold, right? A study led by Sarah Townsend, a professor at USC Marshall School of Business, shows that these moments of high stress are pretty common. In the moment, it might feel as though you are all alone in battling your demons, but the truth is that anxiety and stress happen to everyone, and bearing this in mind can actually help you cope. Townsend studied how people deal with their emotions during stressful situations. She had 52 female students talk about their feelings before giving speeches, and what she found has important lessons for handling stress and being more resilient. Here's the deal. If you talk about your feelings with someone who feels the same way, it can help you feel less stressed. Imagine you're both in a boat, and you're both in rough waters. When you talk to each other about how scary it is, you're no longer on your own, but rowing together. This perception of teamwork reduces stress. Finding emotional support. When the going gets tough, one of the most effective strategies for managing stress is to seek emotional support from colleagues or friends who share a similar emotional profile when facing daunting situations. This support can act as a potent stress relief mechanism by providing a sense of camaraderie and shared experience. Let's say you're part of a tight-knit project team tasked with a critical presentation to top-tier clients. As the presentation date looms closer, your anxiety levels soar. At this moment, you decide to reach out to a colleague who has been in similar high-pressure situations before. You share your concerns, and to your surprise, they nod in understanding, recounting their own experiences of sweaty palms and racing hearts. By connecting this way, you not only feel seen and heard, but you have real-world proof that others can survive what you are currently battling. This shared emotional experience helps normalize your own emotions and reduces feelings of isolation. Together, you might even devise strategies to prepare for the presentation, such as practicing time management and relaxation techniques. This may explain how someone who experiences a severe personal challenge, like divorce or violence, on their own may develop PTSD, whereas people who collectively experience a disaster, like a flood or earthquake, tend to fare much better. There is strength in numbers and in a shared experience. That said, this isn't licensed to look for a fellow catastrophizer. It's an important distinction to be aware of. Enhancing emotional connection through active listening. Another valuable tool is practicing. Chapter 24. And what does that mean? Let's break down a fascinating study here brought to you by Lisa Vittorio and colleagues on the role of Socratic questioning in CBT, a powerful weapon against anxious overthinking and depression. The researchers recruited 123 therapy goers and examined the way they responded to different kinds of questions. Here's what they found. Socratic questioning was extremely effective at helping change people's ingrained thought patterns. Named after the philosopher who was notorious for feigning ignorance in order to lead debate and dialogue, Socratic questions are all about using inquiry to uncover hidden assumptions. Rather than taking anything at face value, a Socratic question makes inquiries about those very things we take to be true but haven't properly examined. One of the greatest Socratic or CBT-style questions is merely to ask, do you have any evidence for that belief? Similarly, Socratic questions can help us arrive at underlying core beliefs by challenging our assumptions. If, for example, we keep asking, and what does that mean? We tend to arrive at certain key schemas and thought patterns that are influencing our lives. For example, I'm going to make a mess of my new business. If you did mess it up, what would that mean? Well, obviously, it would mean I'd burned through my savings and failed to make a profit. And so, what would that mean? It would mean I'd be broke. What's so bad about that? Well, then everyone would think I'm an awful loser. If they did think you were an awful loser, what would that mean? It would mean that I'm a bad person. Here, with just a few well-placed Socratic questions, we uncover the deeper fear and the belief that comes with it, i.e., if I fail at this business, it will mean I'm a bad person. We can even continue with more Socratic questioning. For example, do you have any evidence for that belief? Is that really true? Challenging negative thought patterns. Imagine this scenario. You've had a rough day at work, and you're sitting in traffic, stewing in frustration. Negative thoughts creep in like, I'm always stuck in traffic, or my boss is out to get me. Now, instead of letting those thoughts spiral out of control, you can use the technique of questioning. When you notice these thoughts, hit the mental pause button. Don't let them run rampant. Ask yourself, what evidence do I have for this thought? In the traffic scenario, you might realize that you're not always stuck. It's just been a few bad days. And as for your boss, well, maybe there's no concrete evidence to support that suspicion. Dig deeper by asking, is there an alternative explanation? Maybe the traffic snarl is due to an accident or road work. As for your boss, could their behavior be a result of stress or personal issues? Exploring alternative explanations can dial down. Chapter 25. You need to unplug. Are you ever struck by the feeling that your life in the digital age resembles an overstuffed closet? We're constantly accumulating, storing, and sifting through a vast repository of information at our fingertips. Yet, amid this endless digital cacophony, the more we gather, the less we seem to find. It's as if we're navigating through a maze of distractions, struggling to focus on what truly matters. It's the modern world's paradox. As we gain more access to information, we often lose touch with ourselves. In a fascinating study led by Jeffrey Lambert, Ph.D., the research team set out to explore the impact of a one-week break from social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. They enrolled 154 participants, averaging 29.6 years in age, in a randomized, controlled trial. What they uncovered was nothing short of astonishing. Those who abstained from social media for the week experienced significant improvements in well-being, reductions in depression, and lessened anxiety. These findings shine a light on the potential benefits of short-term social media breaks and hint at the potential power of longer-term interventions. Reclaiming mental space with a social media detox. If you'd like to take a stand against digital distraction, the first thing to do is decide on a duration that suits your lifestyle and goals. This decision is crucial because it sets the tone for your digital sabbatical. It could be as short as a few days, giving you a brief but effective mental reset, or you might opt for a more extended break of a week or even a month. The key is to choose a time frame that feels achievable and realistic for you. I have an admission to make. I used to be social media obsessed, but back then, I'd felt increasingly overwhelmed. It felt like a never-ending stream of notifications, updates, and messages vying for my attention. I knew I needed a break, but the thought of completely disconnecting from my digital world was daunting. So I decided to start with a one-week detox. During that week, I discovered the true power of deliberate disconnection. Initially, it was challenging. The habit of reaching for my phone and mindlessly scrolling through my feeds was deeply ingrained. However, as the days passed, I noticed a significant shift in my mental state. The noise of social media gradually faded, and in its place, I found moments of clarity and calm. I used the time I would have spent on social media to engage in activities that truly mattered to me. I read books I'd been meaning to get to, spent quality time with loved ones, and even started a new hobby. I felt more present in each moment, without the constant distraction of notifications pulling me away. By the end of the week, I realized that I had not only regained control over my mental well-being, but also reconnected. Chapter 26, Stick to the Facts. Never exaggerate. It is a matter of great importance to forego superlatives, in part to avoid offending the truth, and in part to avoid cheapening your judgment. Baltasar Gracian. Our ancient ancestors developed physiological machinery to help them survive threat. They learned to recognize, for example, a dangerous tiger prowling in the forest. Modern man, however, has developed language, and this tool has an interesting property. It can evoke powerful physical and emotional states in us. In other words, we can read words describing a scary and threatening situation and reproduce in our bodies precisely the same fight or flight response as our ancestors did when they encountered the real tiger in the real forest. The unreal can create the real. Threatening words can create the perception of threat, which can become real for us. When we think threatening thoughts, the same thing happens. It's just a quirk of the tool of language. One of the side effects of being able to conjure up hypothetical and non-real situations is that we're then also able to terrify ourselves. When we say, everything is doomed, we need to remember that we are, in a very real sense, listening to ourselves. As we embark on our quest for serenity, we can find guidance in the wisdom of Baltasar Gracian, who cautioned against the perils of exaggeration and championed the deliberate and more limited use of language. Is everything doomed? Really? Or is your printer just broken? Words matter, especially if we are stressing ourselves out unnecessarily by using words in a sloppy way. Instead, let's learn to wield words with precision and to start using them to control and manage our anxiety rather than to fire it up. Mindful use of superlatives. The way we use superlatives in our language can have a profound impact on our emotional well-being. Often we might find ourselves prone to exaggerated statements that magnify our worries and anxieties. To effectively manage anxiety, let's talk about the first tip: use superlatives mindfully. This means avoiding excessive or inappropriate usage and reserving them for situations or qualities that genuinely deserve such extreme descriptions. Consider the following scenario. You're facing a challenging situation at work, and your initial reaction is to declare, "This is the worst situation ever." While this may express your frustration, it can also intensify your anxiety. More than this, it can convince you that this emotional appraisal is an accurate reflection of reality itself. Though you might feel as though this is the worst situation, that doesn't follow that it truthfully is. Instead, try a more balanced description like, "This is a challenging situation." Can you feel the difference it makes to say this rather than make an exaggerated claim? By substituting worst with challenging, you acknowledge the difficulty without catastrophizing. Chapter 27. The fastest way to find perspective. "Memento mori," the monarch whispered. "Remember death. Even for those who wield great power, life is brief. There's only one way to triumph over death, and that is by making our lives masterpieces." Dan Brown. How often do you catch yourself lost in the labyrinth of your thoughts, overwhelmed by life's myriad choices and worries? It's an affliction that plagues many of us in the modern world, where the pace of life and the deluge of information can leave our minds in a state of perpetual turmoil. In such times, We can all use a compass to navigate the chaos and complexity. And this compass is none other than memento mori, a phrase that has echoed through the ages, whispered by kings and scholars alike. As the quote from Dan Brown suggests, memento mori invites us to remember death, to acknowledge the impermanence of life, and to embrace it as a guiding force in our decisions. It's as powerful a tool today as it was in ancient times. Mindful decision-making with memento mori. The first tip on our list is a compass for navigating life's treacherous waters with style and grace. Imagine you're at a crossroads, a pivotal moment that could shape your destiny. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you decide to pause and remember your mortality, memento mori. You stand there, poised and ready, and you ask yourself, if time is a rare and precious commodity, how do I want to spend it? What truly sets my soul on fire? Who am I really? And what ought I to do with my time here on this earth? These questions aren't here to spook or overwhelm you. Rather, they're here to cut through the noise and nonsense. They're a secret weapon for making wise, masterful decisions that resonate with you on a deeper level. You have limited time on this earth. Do you want to spend it arguing with strangers on a low-quality internet forum? One day, you will close your eyes and never open them again. Do you want to waste your eyes right now in this moment watching reruns of a show you didn't even like the first time around? One day soon, you will be old and looking back on your life. Do you want to say that the height of your achievement was avoiding risk and responsibility? Before I became a full-time author, I was ensnared in the corporate rat race, chasing promotions and paychecks like they were the Holy Grail. It was a frenzied existence, a never-ending quest for more, without ever pausing to ponder if it was what I truly craved. And then, in strides memento mori. I decided to put it to the test. I mused, if my days were numbered, what would I regret not having done? The answers were crystal clear. Quality time with family, personal growth, and forging bonds with fellow earthlings. So I did the unthinkable. I hit the reset button on my life. More family gatherings, more time to write, fewer late nights at the office. I enrolled in writing courses that fed my soul and fostered relationships that enriched my spirit. And guess what? My career didn't nosedive into oblivion. It soared to new heights. Chapter 28. What's your default state? Here's a suggestion. Find out how to make zero deeply satisfying. Then the rest just flows forward as you walk, and there's no such thing as wasted time anymore. When the sun comes out again, you wave to your oldest friend, and it waves back. Les Matheson. Life often feels like an ever-accelerating race, where we relentlessly pursue achievements, success markers, and tangible outcomes. We measure our worth by the number of tasks we complete, promotions we secure, or the likes and followers we accumulate on social media. This unending quest to associate happiness and self-worth with external accomplishments can leave us feeling adrift in a sea of dissatisfaction and restlessness. Interestingly, I stumbled upon Les Matheson's advice on a Quora thread, and it resonated deeply with me. He imparts a wisdom that encourages us to shift our perspective and find value in embracing zero as a default state, while also detaching from the obsession with outcomes. Let's dive into these two tips inspired by this thought-provoking word. Making zero the fulfillment default. First, I want to talk about making zero our default emotional state. It's pretty simple. The essence of embracing zero as a default state lies in the liberation it offers. When you stop relying on external achievements to feel fulfilled, you free yourself from the relentless chase for validation. Where you are right now is sufficient. It's a powerful reorientation of our perspective, one that doesn't entail surrendering our ambitions or aspirations. Rather, it's an invitation to recognize that our intrinsic worth as individuals is not solely determined by the accumulation of external accolades or accomplishments. In other words, our value as human beings extends far beyond the reach of society's measuring sticks. For the anxious among us, the present moment is always a negative, always an absence or deficit. We feel like we have to act from a place of force or threat. Do it now or else. If we see ourselves as constantly in this form of mental debt, then we always behave reactively and from a place of fear. If you see the zero of the present moment as completely full and enough as it is, then you give yourself the ability to act from curiosity, creativity, or the desire to grow. By embracing this perspective, we can free ourselves from the anxiety and restlessness that so often accompany the relentless pursuit of constant achievement. The pressure to consistently check off boxes and secure external validation can be overwhelming, leaving us perpetually striving for more without ever finding contentment. To apply this concept in your own life, start by consciously acknowledging your achievements without allowing them to define your self-worth. Celebrate your successes, but remember that they're just one aspect of your life, not the entire picture. Practice mindfulness and gratitude to appreciate the simple joys and moments that often go unnoticed. In Chapter 29, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. If you treat every situation as a life and death matter, you'll die a lot of times. Dean Smith. We've all been there, contemplating the audacious goal of living a life where every moment resembles a high-stakes game of survival, a life free from the relentless grip of anxiety over impending doom. It's almost as if Dean Smith leans in and tells us, you know, how you sometimes treat every situation like it's life or death? Well, maybe it's time for a plot twist. In our quest for success and happiness, we often crank up the tension in our daily lives, fanning the flames of perpetual stress. But what if we recognize that we were the ones doing this? And what if we could pull off an epic script flip? What if we could give our approach to crises a makeover and find a more balanced way to deal with life's challenges? Creating mental distance from panic. Reframing life and death situations as opportunities for learning is a valuable approach that can profoundly shape one's perspective on challenges. It involves consciously shifting away from the instinctual response of treating situations as constant emergencies, and instead fostering a mindset that seeks valuable lessons. By creating mental distance between oneself and panic, individuals can redirect their energy toward anticipating the insights that can be extracted from challenging situations. This approach encourages personal growth and development through adversity, transforming potentially overwhelming experiences into valuable learning opportunities. As a child, I vividly recall a situation where I unknowingly applied this principle. I was about 8 years old, and my family decided to embark on a camping trip deep in the woods. It was my first time camping, and I was both excited and anxious. Everything seemed like a life and death scenario to my young mind, from starting a campfire to setting up a tent. The unfamiliarity of the situation triggered a sense of constant emergency. During our camping adventure, a sudden rainstorm caught us off guard. Our campsite turned into a soggy mess, and our carefully prepared food was drenched. Initially, panic set in, and I remember feeling a sense of despair. My father, however, always the wise and composed figure in such situations, offered a different perspective. He encouraged us to view this unexpected turn of events as an opportunity to learn about adaptability and resilience. Instead of dwelling on the inconvenience, he suggested that we embrace the chance to grow and develop through this challenge. We set about finding ways to improve our campsite's drainage, creatively salvaging our wet food, and adjusting our plans to accommodate the weather. This childhood experience left a lasting impression on me. It was my first lesson in reframing a seemingly dire situation as a valuable opportunity for learning and personal development. Instead of succumbing to panic, I learned to focus on the practical lessons that could be gleaned from adversity. Chapter 30. Getting comfy with the gray areas. To think in terms of either pessimism or optimism oversimplifies the truth. The problem is to see reality as it is. Thich Nhat Hanh. In the grand symphony of life, we often find ourselves swinging between the extremes of pessimism and optimism. Like a pendulum that can't decide its direction, we grapple with the complexities of reality, searching for that elusive balance. It's as if we're standing in a room with two doors, one labeled pessimism and the other optimism, and we're constantly torn between which one to enter. But perhaps there's a third door, hidden in the shadows, one that reads, reality as it is. Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us that the world we inhabit is far from binary. It's not a realm of perpetual sunshine or eternal storms. Rather, it's a place where nuance and shades of gray are the norm. To navigate it with clarity and resilience, we must cultivate a balanced perspective. This entails recognizing that reality is a multifaceted gem, each facet holding a unique piece of the truth. Beyond pessimism and optimism, maintaining a balanced perspective is a fundamental aspect of navigating life's challenges and opportunities effectively. Instead of succumbing to the extremes of pessimism or blind optimism, adopting a balanced perspective allows individuals to make well-informed decisions and foster resilience. This approach acknowledges that reality is seldom black and white. It is often complex, nuanced, and filled with subtlety. By embracing this mindset, individuals can better navigate the intricacies of various situations and events. One crucial aspect of cultivating a balanced perspective is the recognition of our own biases and automatic judgments. Humans are inherently biased, and these biases can cloud our judgment and lead us to hasty conclusions. Therefore, it is essential to engage in introspection and self-awareness, challenging our preconceived notions and prejudices. By doing so, we become better equipped to approach situations with an open mind, ready to consider different viewpoints and factors. Incorporating a balanced perspective also involves a commitment to gathering information and seeking out diverse perspectives. In today's interconnected world, information is readily accessible, but its quality can vary widely. It's vital to be discerning consumers of information, to evaluate sources critically, and to weigh the evidence before forming conclusions. This approach not only helps us make informed decisions, but also promotes intellectual growth and empathy. Now let me tell you about Hillary, whom I met at a writers' convention. She was a writer who epitomized the value of a balanced perspective. As a writer, She understood the importance of exploring the depth and complexity of characters and situations in her stories. She believed that real-life situations were no different. In her interactions with fellow writers and attendees. Chapter 31. You don't have to be a hero. Victory breeds hatred, for the conquered is unhappy. The calm one is he who has given up both victory and defeat. The Dhammapada. Have you ever wondered if our endless pursuit of victory might be leading us down a path of unhappiness? It's as if our lives are an unending quest for triumph, propelling us forward forever with no end in sight. We bask in the glory of our achievements and wallow in the despair of our failures, riding the emotional roller coaster that swings between euphoria and despondency. But in the midst of this perpetual cycle of wins and losses, we often fail to recognize a profound truth. The very pursuit of victory itself can sow the seeds of discontent. The continued trap of seeing yourself as a victim is, in the end, the real chain binding you. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would victory lead to hatred? Well, the ancient wisdom encapsulated in the words of the Dhammapada provides us with profound insights into this phenomenon. The Buddha's words remind us of a timeless truth, that our attachment to outcomes, including our blind desire for victory, can itself become the source of your suffering. Mastering non-attachment. In the pursuit of our goals and dreams, we often become entangled in the web of attachment. We crave success, victory, and validation, and we attach our sense of self-worth to these outcomes. We want to master the world, other people, ourselves. We want to be in control. We want to be invulnerable winners and eternal champions. But here's where the first tip comes in. Attachment to these outcomes can lead to suffering. Instead, the advice is to practice non-attachment. Imagine a scenario where you're deeply invested in winning a promotion at work or achieving a personal milestone like running a marathon. You're passionate and dedicated, and you put in your best effort. This is what our culture tells us is smart and admirable, right? But as the anticipation builds, so does the anxiety. You become fixated on the outcome, believing that your worth as a person is tied to it. If you succeed, you're a hero. If you fail, you're nothing. The problem was not that you set an ambitious goal or that you enjoyed the challenge. The problem was your unconscious attachment to these things and the inability to see that they are not who you really are. Does non-attachment mean selling all your stuff on eBay and going off to live under a bridge like a weird modern-day monk? Of course not. Unless you want to, I guess. To practice non-attachment, you must simply start by acknowledging that your attachment to outcomes exists in the first place. It's not a character flaw. It's a common human tendency. Beware that this also applies to people who see themselves as losers or too humble to want much. They too have their attachments, but they are harder to see. Have you ever met anyone with a martyr complex? Think carefully about the victory they may have been attached to, and you'll see what I mean. Once you're aware of the all-too-human... Chapter 32. Understanding your zone of comfort. You only have control over 3 things in your life: the thoughts you think, the images you visualize, and the actions you take. Jake Canfield. Think of life as a vast, unpredictable river, and you're in a small boat navigating its currents. In the pursuit of personal growth and well-being, we often find ourselves entangled in the river's currents, worrying about the swirling eddies of external circumstances, the opinions of others, and the turbulent tides of global events, all of which are beyond our control. It's only human to look at all this swirling and desperately want to get it all to flow your way. But as Jack Canfield wisely reminds us, perhaps it's not the river we should focus on steering. Instead, we have control over just three essential elements in our lives: the thoughts we think, the images we visualize, and the actions we take. That's it. These are the oars with which we can navigate our boat through life's unpredictable waters. Now, you might not think that those three things amount to much, but if you know how to use them, they become more than enough. Shifting focus and taking proactive actions. Let's talk about recognizing the limits of our control. Of course, we understand intellectually that we're not in control of everything in the universe. And yet, when we get upset that not everything goes our way, isn't this exactly what we are unconsciously expecting? It's like understanding the limits of your garden. You can nurture the plants within it, but you can't control the weather outside it. Similarly, in life, we often fret uselessly over circumstances, people's opinions, or global events, matters beyond our garden, so to speak. To make a meaningful change, it's essential to shift your focus and identify the areas where you actually do have influence and agency, the aspects that fall within your garden. When you've identified your sphere of control in this way, it's time to channel your energy in a purposeful way. By redirecting your focus toward what you can control, you not only ensure that you're doing the best you can with your resources and current situation, but you are also avoiding wasting those resources in a way that gets you nowhere. This principle is akin to tending to the plants in your garden instead of lamenting the unpredictable weather. If you simply sat on the porch and complained for an hour about how annoying the wind was, you actually have a double loss. At the end of the hour, nothing has changed, except that the hour is gone and will never come again. Even worse, you've done nothing to actually mitigate the wind. For example, by tying your tomato plants to stakes, or putting up protective barriers to protect the flowers. This idea seems simple enough when it comes to gardening, but it's easy to miss when it comes to our own lives. How much time have you wasted worrying, complaining, or resenting a situation? How much of that time could have been used to either make useful changes or else do the work of accepting the reality and simply moving on? Consider a person who aspires to advance their career. Chapter 33. Don't suffer more than you have to. The resistance to the unpleasant situation is the root of suffering. Ram Dass. What's the difference between pain and suffering? What's the difference between messing up on Tuesday and ruminating about it for hours and hours on Wednesday after the event has already passed? If we are alive, sooner or later, we will experience pain. But if we cling to this experience, resist it, attach to it, or fight with it, we're no longer just experiencing that initial pain. We're now experiencing the pain of our thinking about the situation. It's this secondary reaction that we call suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Accepting difficult circumstances. First, acknowledgement and acceptance do not equate to passive resignation. Rather, they represent a shift in perspective and attitude toward adversity. They involve recognizing the fundamental truth of impermanence, that everything in life, both pleasant and unpleasant, is in a constant state of change. By cultivating acceptance and surrender, we reduce the resistance that fuels our suffering. This shift in mindset enables us to respond to challenges with greater clarity and peace of mind. I vividly remember a period in my life when I faced a significant career setback. My initial response was marked by resistance, an overwhelming desire to change the circumstances, frustration over the perceived injustice, and a deep sense of disappointment. I felt as if I were wrestling with an unyielding force, which only left me mentally and emotionally drained. However, I realized that my resistance to the situation was exacerbating my suffering. It was akin to a tugging match where the more I pulled away from the adversity, the tighter it gripped me. With this newfound perspective, I began to embrace the concept of impermanence. I acknowledged that challenges, like all things in life, are transitory. They come and go. If I try to hold on to a transient experience, however, that's when I cause myself the most trouble. Letting go of clinging and resistance doesn't make the initial pain go away any sooner than it would have, but it does prevent you from engaging in any unnecessary suffering, and we humans are responsible for a lot of our own misery. The shift in my attitude was subtle, yet transformative. Instead of constantly battling against my adversity, I began to navigate it. I realized that acceptance did not mean complacency. It meant acknowledging the reality of the situation without judgment. It meant accepting that I had the power to choose my response to the challenge. As I practiced acknowledgement and acceptance, the resistance that had fueled my suffering began to wane. I found myself responding to the setback with greater clarity and emotional resilience. While the situation remained unchanged, my inner landscape had transformed. I no longer viewed adversity as an insurmountable obstacle, but rather... Chapter 34. Worry has no function. If you have fear of some pain or suffering, you should examine whether there is anything you can do about it. If you can, there's no need to worry about it. If you cannot do anything, then there is also no need to worry. Dalai Lama. Our emotions are like threads intricately woven into the tapestry of our lives, creating a complex pattern of experiences. In this intricate design, one thread stands out with an undeniable presence: fear. Fear is a useful emotion when it tells us to avoid something dangerous. But what about when we fear our emotions themselves? What about when what we fear hasn't happened and will never happen? Amidst this tapestry of emotions, Dalai Lama's timeless piece of wisdom invites us to examine our relationship with fear, including our fear of our own negative emotions. Like the ancient Stoics, the Dalai Lama recognizes that we can control some things and not others. But he has an additional point, that whether we can control them or not, there's never any need to worry about them. Either act or accept when you cannot act. Worrying adds nothing. Become a problem solver. Picture fear as a tangled knot, a knot that seems impossible to untangle. It's at this juncture that we must resist the urge to retreat or succumb, and instead, we must unravel this emotional enigma with precision and clarity. Let's not throw the whole rope away in frustration, but let's also not panic and then pull on both sides, making the knot even tighter still. The crux of this problem lies in confronting fear head-on, refusing to let it paralyze us. Much like a skilled chess player who doesn't shy away from the opponent's advances, but instead assesses the board, we must identify the specific actions we can take to address or mitigate the source of our fear. This is the cornerstone of the problem-solving mindset, a deliberate and calculated response to life's uncertainties. Importantly, worry has no place here. It is utterly useless, so you can confidently set it aside. To build a puzzle, you must have a strategy. For example, start with the corners and edges. Go step by step. Pause to see how far you've gone and adjust as you go. Be patient. Solving life's problems is the same. You'll need a strategy, patience, and a step-by-step approach. When worry and panic are removed, you demystify the big, complex problem in front of you and make way for a clear plan of action. Developing a plan of action is akin to drawing a roadmap through the labyrinth of fear. Each step represents a deliberate move, a calculated response to your unique circumstances. If your fear stems from a looming deadline at work, your plan may include setting achievable daily goals, seeking help from colleagues, or utilizing time management techniques. With a plan in place, you transform your fear into a challenge. Chapter 35. Put your stress away. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the magic of petting a furry dog or a purring cat. There's just an undeniable joy in that tactile connection, one that seems to whisk away worries and troubles, if only for a moment. It turns out, this simple act of animal interaction holds a secret, and it's not just about fuzzy feelings. Recent research from Washington State University unveiled the incredible benefits of Pet Your Stress Away programs for college students who got the chance to engage with cats and dogs. Not only did their moods brighten, but something remarkable happened within their bodies, a physiological transformation that brought more relaxation and balance to their lives. Bond with furry friends. Here's how you can start de-stressing with the help of furry friends. Start by seeking opportunities for pet therapy or animal interactions in your community. Why not consider volunteering at your local animal shelter? These shelters are often in need of helping hands to care for and socialize with animals awaiting their forever homes. The act of volunteering not only benefits the animals, but also provides you with a therapeutic dose of companionship that can work wonders for your mental state. Alternatively, reach out to friends or family members with pets and offer to pet sit when they're away. Spending quality time with their animals can be a joyous and relaxing experience for you, while allowing your loved ones to enjoy their travels with peace of mind. And if you're seeking a more casual, yet equally rewarding experience, explore the growing trend of pet cafes or sanctuaries that permit interactions with animals. These establishments offer a unique opportunity to unwind and connect with various animals, from playful kittens to serene horses, all while enjoying a cup of coffee or a serene setting. So, why do these animal interactions hold such incredible therapeutic power? The answer lies in the way they bring us into the present moment. When we engage with animals, we immerse ourselves in a world that transcends the constant stream of thoughts, worries, and anxieties that often plague our minds. Animals don't dwell on the past or fret about the future. They live in the here and now. By connecting with them, we too are pulled into the present, experiencing the profound calmness that it offers. What's more, an animal can help us access feelings of kindness, joy, and care, all without speaking a word, something that can be difficult with fellow human beings. Animals have their own quiet wisdom that can be a tonic for the frazzled, over-intellectual human mind. Begin by allocating time for animal interactions, even if it's just a few minutes each day or a couple of hours each week. Allow yourself to fully engage during these moments. Whether it's by playing with a lively pup, quietly observing the graceful movements of a fish, or sharing a moment of stillness with a majestic bird. Seek and create present moments. Chapter 36, Plan in Reverse. Motivation often follows a familiar trajectory. It starts strong at the beginning and the end, but tends to wane during the challenging middle stages. This pattern has piqued the interest of researchers, leading to a recent study conducted by experts from the Peking University HSBC Business School, the Korea University Business School, and the University of Iowa. Their study sought to uncover the impact of a strategic technique known as backward planning. Through a meticulously designed set. In such scenarios, it became evident that backward planning offered distinct advantages. Now let's delve deeper into the techniques inspired by this study. Start where you plan to end. For the first tip, let's dig deeper into the practice of backward planning. It's a powerful technique for achieving your goals by working from the endpoint, envisioning success, and mapping out the steps required to reach that desired outcome in a reverse fashion. This approach can significantly enhance your motivation and productivity, as it provides a clear roadmap and helps mitigate the overwhelming feelings that often accompany the middle stages of goal pursuit. By vividly visualizing your success, you create a strong emotional connection to your goal, making it more compelling and attainable. For example, let's say your goal is to complete a challenging project at work. Instead of fixating on the numerous tasks and potential obstacles ahead, you would begin by picturing yourself presenting the finished product to your colleagues or receiving praise from your superiors. This positive mental image not only boosts your motivation, but also provides a source of inspiration during the inevitable difficulties you may encounter along the way. But now, rewind and think of the step you took just before the end point. What was it? What about the step that came just before that? As you work backward from your endpoint, you can start to outline the key milestones and steps required to reach your goal. This process effectively breaks down your goal into manageable, actionable tasks. Returning to our work project example, you might identify the final presentation as the endpoint. To get there, you need to prepare a compelling presentation, gather relevant data, conduct research, and complete various other tasks. By structuring your plan in reverse, you create a clear and detailed roadmap to follow. Furthermore, you ensure that you're planning a roadmap that genuinely takes you to your destination. Too many of us waste time on a plan that we realize too late was not traveling in the right direction at all. Backward planning also allows you to anticipate and address potential obstacles and challenges early in the process. You won't be surprised by these, and that means you won't be derailed by them either. When you visualize success and work backward, you can identify the critical points where difficulties might arise. This foresight enables you to proactively plan for continued. Chapter 37. Put it in black and white. A 2018 research study conducted by a team led by Joshua M. Smith delved into the world of positive affect journaling, PAJ. Their aim was clear: to investigate whether this program, designed to help individuals manage their emotions, could effectively alleviate anxiety and improve the well-being of those grappling with medical conditions. Daily journaling. At first glance, keeping a journal might not seem like such a big deal. Can it really improve your mental health? perhaps more than you can think. Imagine it as your daily sanctuary, a sacred place where you can retreat from the noise and chaos of the world, if only for a brief moment. The first step is to set aside a specific time each day for this practice. It's really scheduling an appointment with yourself, carving out time for your well-being, and making a commitment to your own development. For me, this meant waking up 15 minutes earlier each day, before the demands of work and daily life took over. I found a quiet corner by a window, bathed in the soft morning light, where I could reflect and write without distractions. The location doesn't have to be extravagant. It merely needs to be a place where you feel at ease, a place where you can be alone with your thoughts. As you open your journal and put pen to paper, remember this. Your journal is a safe haven for your thoughts, emotions, and concerns. It's a judgment-free zone where you can pour out your heart without fear of criticism or reproach, even from yourself. This is where the magic happens. Write freely without constraints and allow your thoughts to flow. There's no need for polished prose or perfect grammar. This space is exclusively for you. Keep your journal private. It's just between you and the pages. The act of journaling is like opening a pressure valve for your mind, allowing pent-up anxieties and overthinking to dissipate. When you put your thoughts and emotions onto paper, you give them form and substance, making them less daunting. You transform abstract worries into tangible words, and in doing so, you regain a sense of control over them. Funnily enough, they often seem so much smaller and more manageable in black and white than they did swirling around in your head. In my own experience, the act of journaling became a daily ritual that helped me anchor my thoughts and emotions, making them less daunting and more manageable. It was a sanctuary where I could untangle all the day's mind knots and start to slow down my thoughts enough to process and work through them. You can do the same. You don't need to be a writer or have a fancy journal or a lot of free time. Just start scribbling and see where you land up. The habit of asking yourself why. Now let's delve deeper into a specific journaling technique that involves consistently asking yourself why during your journaling sessions and in your daily life. It's a simple yet potent tool for Chapter 38. Put a label on it. Imagine social media as the canvas of our collective emotions. Well, it turns out there's an interesting new study that did just that, analyzing Twitter posts from thousands of users. What did they discover? When people mustered the courage to express their emotions, a fascinating transformation unfolded. If they said they felt good or bad, their tweets embarked on a journey from positive to negative and back to neutral. The real kicker? Expressing those tough negative emotions had the most immediate impact. They call this phenomenon affect labeling. And while scientists had tinkered with it in labs, this study ventured into the real-world emotions that flowed on social media. The revelation is clear. Putting words to your feelings and giving them a name can be the thing that allows you to acknowledge and then release that same emotion. Emotion labeling. Imagine you're in a dense forest, and suddenly you encounter a wild and mysterious creature. It's unlike anything you've seen before, both captivating and intimidating. You don't know whether to say hello or play dead or just start saying your prayers. Now, what if I told you this animal is a cougalong, and that it's a vegetarian, harmless, and nothing to worry about? How do you feel now? This creature is a lot like your emotions, a sometimes confusing blend of thoughts, sensations, and feelings. Some emotions can spring on us unawares and take unexpected and unfamiliar forms. When a strong emotion descends on us, we may not know how to respond, or we may immediately get caught up in blindly reacting to it, not fully sure what we're dealing with. But when we stop and name things, we gain a certain power over them. The unknown can be threatening and stressful, but when we name a thing, it's no longer unknown to us, and this can instantly bring down our feelings of threat and uncertainty. Even better, knowing a thing's name means we can talk about our experience, which means we can take it out of our head and start to externalize it. Perhaps we can even journal about it. When the forest of your mind becomes dense with the underbrush of strong emotions, perhaps frustration, anxiety, or sadness, don't panic. This is where emotional labeling comes into play. Instead of running from this emotional creature, pause and acknowledge it. Give it a name. By assigning a specific name to your emotion, you create a small psychological distance between yourself and the emotion. This newfound objectivity enables you to observe your emotions more clearly and without judgment. From this point, you can choose how to act, and this enables your emotional regulation. One final tip: be careful about the difference between emotions and thoughts. For example, you might ask yourself to label the emotion you're feeling. You think, I feel like I'm a failure. But just because... Chapter 39, Count Your Blessings. It's no surprise that being thankful for what you have is a good idea. But what may surprise you is that there are clinical findings to support this common advice. Let's look at a study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies that sheds light on the effects of gratitude on our daily lives. In this study, adults were divided into two groups and asked to describe their daily well-being and stress levels over a 2-week period. One group was tasked with a simple exercise. They were instructed to think about and list things each day that they were grateful for, while the other group did not partake in this exercise, and the researchers simply monitored their well-being and stress levels. The results were nothing short of astonishing. Those who practiced daily gratitude reported feeling happier on the days they engaged in this exercise. This in itself is a remarkable revelation. The act of intentionally counting one's blessings had an immediate and noticeable impact on their overall happiness. There were no material differences to the research group during the study, but importantly, their perception greatly changed. By more deliberately noticing how lucky they already were, they actually began to feel more fortunate. Practice daily gratitude. The essence of this first tip is straightforward. Set aside a few minutes each day to intentionally think about and reflect upon the things you are grateful for. These can range from significant moments, like the unwavering support of a dear friend during trying times, to the seemingly trivial pleasures, such as the exquisite colors of a sunset or the taste of a sumptuous meal. The key is to pause, to savor these moments, and to genuinely acknowledge their presence in your life. Whether your blessings are big or small doesn't matter. What matters is the state of mind you enter into when you consciously entertain gratitude for their existence. When you engage in daily gratitude, you are effectively rewiring your brain's neural pathways. By focusing on the positive aspects of your life, You redirect your attention away from the stressors and anxieties that often dominate your thoughts and onto what may have been there all along, only you didn't quite appreciate it fully. The result? A shift in your overall perspective, which spells greater well-being, greater resilience, and much less stress. Start by dedicating a few minutes each day to this practice. Perhaps you prefer to kickstart your morning with a moment of gratitude, reflecting upon the warmth of your bed or the serenity of the dawn. Alternatively, you may find solace in nighttime contemplation, where you acknowledge the joys of the day that's passed. Incorporate your gratitude practice into your journaling, prayer, meditation, or walking habits, or simply squeeze in a moment of thanks while you're on the subway or waiting in the doctor's office. Consider keeping a gratitude journal where you jot down the Chapter 40, The You Behind the Thoughts. Be the silent watcher of your thoughts and behavior. You are beneath the thinker. You are the stillness beneath the mental noise. You are the love and joy beneath the pain. Eckhart Tolle. Take a moment and consider the nature of your own thoughts. Do you hear a ceaseless chatter, constant analysis, judgment, self-criticism? What if there was a way to step back from this mental whirlwind and find a profound sense of peace and self-understanding? The wisdom in Eckhart Tolle's words invites us to do just that, to be the silent watcher of our thoughts and behavior. But what exactly does this mean? And how can we apply it in our lives? The essence of Tolle's insight lies in recognizing that beneath the cacophony of our thoughts, beneath the thinker that we so closely identify with, there exists an infinite stillness, an unchanging core of love and joy that transcends the fleeting pain and turmoil of our everyday experiences. Leaves on a stream. The first strategy is the practice of leaves on a stream. This practice is about becoming a silent watcher of thoughts and becoming aware of them as thoughts as we watch them arise in our awareness and drift away again. Imagine a gentle, meandering stream and a tree dropping leaves into the water. As you peacefully contemplate the stream, you notice thoughts popping into your mind. As they do, you place each one on a passing leaf and watch as the water gently carries it away until it's gone from view. Gracefully and without judgment or attachment, you do this with every thought that crosses your mind. If you think, this is boring, then imagine the thought floating out of your head and picture placing it on a leaf in front of you. Watch it go. If you think, wow, I'm really good at this meditation stuff, then do the same. Onto the leaf it goes, then it floats away. If you think, I don't get it. Am I doing it right? What about now? Then, you guessed it, put it onto a leaf and let it all go. With practice, you'll start to notice how this technique strengthens your ability to recognize thoughts for what they are, mere passing phenomena. You'll become less likely to fuse with thoughts and cling to them, or else resist them. With this psychological distance, you can discover enormous calm and serenity. Try to practice this every day. The number of minutes is not as important as what you do in those minutes. Seek out a peaceful environment where distractions are minimal. Close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and allow your thoughts to flow freely. Chapter 41. It's all interpretation. Peace is the result of retraining your mind to process life as it is, rather than as you think it should be. Wayne Dyer. A stubborn mind, unyielding in its pursuit of an idealized existence, often finds itself trapped in a web of stress and disappointment. Have you ever had one of those deeply unpleasant expectation versus reality moments? All the advice out there told you to think positive, to dream big, and go for what your heart desired. And now you're bitterly disappointed because nothing even remotely lived up to your lofty ideals. You can blame social media for this, or point to the rise of manifestation ideologies and the popularity of gurus who tell their followers that as long as they dream big and believe with all their hearts, they're entitled to the grandest fantasies they can imagine. But reality always comes a-knockin', one way or another. Your attitude will determine whether this intrusion of reality is a catastrophe or no big deal at all. Life may not always align perfectly with your desires, and that's okay. In fact, if you want to make sure your desires have the biggest chance of becoming real, then those desires need to be respectful of and congruent with reality. Accept the gap between reality and dreams. This lesson hit home during a pivotal period in my own life. I had charted an ambitious course, driven by a fervent desire to achieve a specific career milestone. Every step was carefully calculated, every expectation meticulously outlined. However, the universe had its own plans, and the path I had envisioned took me on numerous unexpected detours. Initially, these deviations from my plan were sources of immense frustration and disappointment. It was as if life were conspiring against my aspirations. I want to say I was wise and figured everything out in time, but I didn't. I learned it, as they say, the hard way. And because I wouldn't let go of unrealistic expectations, they were basically taken from me. I had to accept this. There was no choice. But I realized that this acceptance wasn't a surrender to mediocrity or a compromise of my dreams, but a recognition of the fact that my dreams needed reappraisal. I realized that my disappointment wasn't a punishment from the universe. It was a sign that it was me who was being unreasonable. I began to ask myself hard questions. What were my expectations exactly? Were they fair and reasonable? Was I laboring under the misconception that life should be this or that? Was that really a fair way to think? It dawned on me, very slowly, that I was stressing myself out by making demands on reality and insisting that it be something that it wasn't. I unpacked all the... Chapter 42. The Value of Letting Go. To err is human. To forgive people and yourself for poor behavior is to be sensible and realistic. Albert Ellis. As humans, we are prone to making mistakes. We are imperfect. However, it is in the act of forgiveness, both toward others and, crucially, toward ourselves, that we find the wisdom and grace to accommodate this imperfection without it being a source of stress. Visualizing emotions as balloons. Imagine your past mistakes and the wounds inflicted upon you by others are nothing more than a whimsical collection of colorful balloons, each one tethered to your wrist. Picture yourself deftly untying those strings and releasing those balloons one by one into the boundless expanse of the open sky. As they ascend, carried away by the gentle breeze, you relieve yourself of their burden. By confronting your emotional grudges and wounds head-on, and then deliberately setting them free, you become the agent of your own healing. We forgive not for the sake of others, although that's a nice thought, but for ourselves, because we may finally be ready to set down whatever we've been carrying. Forgiving others, then, is an act of self-forgiveness and an acknowledgement that you, too, are imperfect, that the past is the past, and that, despite it all, you choose to move forward in lightness, just as light as those balloons that float peacefully away from you. This liberation is akin to decluttering your mental and emotional attic, making room for fresh experiences and authentic connections based on who you are today, and not on the wounded person you might have been yesterday. Now, cultivating empathy, understanding, and compassion toward yourself and those who share the stage in your life drama, that's a wonderful thing. When you view your own foibles and the missteps of others through the lens of understanding, it becomes easier to sever the heavy chains of judgment and resentment. But we can forgive even if our own empathy and understanding are flawed or incomplete. We can forgive without liking what has happened and without foregoing our right to be cautious, wiser, and more discerning in the future. We can forgive right now, today, even if we don't really feel ready to do so. We forgive not because we are bigger people or because we've found a way to see our wrongdoers as better than they might be. We forgive simply because we value healing, growth, and wholeness more than we value dwelling on the hurt of the past. And that's a choice we can make at any time, no matter how we feel. Neutrality mindset. Picture your life as a colossal quilt, a patchwork masterpiece stitched together from countless experiences and actions. Chapter 43. Write it out. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Jon Kabat-Zinn. Surfing is an art form of balance, rhythm, and connection. It's the dance between a writer and the ocean's dynamic waves, a graceful harmony of skill and nature's raw power. But beyond the sun-kissed beaches and surfboards, there's another kind of surfing, one that takes place in the vast sea of our minds. Jon Kabat-Zinn's insightful words serve as the compass for navigating the waters of our thoughts and emotions. In this mental ocean, we too must learn to ride the waves. Change is permanent. Picture yourself on a beach, squinting toward the shimmering horizon as waves roll in, each with its own personality. Some waves are smooth and easy, others are fluffy and a little tricky to get through, and some are big and scary and hit you with way more force than you expected. Life's changes are equally varied, constantly shifting, rarely giving you a heads up, and definitely not offering a pause button. But just like a seasoned surfer, we can recognize that change is an inherent part of life, the waves in the ocean. Now, I'm not saying you should throw your hands up and let the water take you where it will. Instead, accept that circumstances will be what they are, and your only job is to be as aware and adaptable as you can. It's about learning to flow with life's changes, not trying to wrestle them into submission. Think of it this way. When you're stuck in traffic, you can scream at the cars, or you can turn on a podcast and make the most of it. You could complain about bad weather all day long, or you could shrug your shoulders and say, I guess today will just have to be a cozy inside day, and change your plans. To become a better change surfer, begin by acknowledging the impermanence of circumstances. By doing so, you release the death grip on anxiety and fear that often accompanies the uncertainty of change. Instead of dwelling on the inevitable problems, shift your focus to the solutions. Remember, just as a seasoned surfer reads the waves' cues and gracefully adjusts, you can navigate the twists and turns of life with your problem-solving skills intact. You can't change the wave, but you can position yourself in many different ways. Stay still and let it crash into you, turn your back to it and let it carry you, or grab a surfboard and even dare to have a little fun with it. The next time life serves you a big wave of change, don't be the person yelling at the ocean to stop. Be the one who grabs a board and says, let's dance. Ride those waves with a dash of style, a sprinkle of adaptability, and a sense of humor. It'll make the journey all the more enjoyable. Ride the wave. In the world of surfing, it's not about riding the biggest wave. Chapter 44. Stop comparing yourself. The reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone's highlight reel. Steve Furtick. In an era dominated by social media, we can feel like our lives have to look like Hollywood blockbusters, with carefully selected scenes, curated blurbs and stories, and glossy photo shoots. With each swipe and scroll, we're inundated by highlights galore. The picturesque vacations, the radiant smiles, and the impressive achievements. It's like everyone else is starring in their own feature film, complete with a perfectly crafted trailer for public consumption. But at this point, it should be a surprise to nobody. This kind of comparison hurts our mental health in serious ways. There is a deception behind it all. We compare our boring, nitty-gritty, and less-than-perfect real lives, as Steve Furtick says, with everyone else's artificially and heavily curated illusion of a perfect life. Almost always, the comparison leaves us feeling inferior and more compelled to fake a life that isn't really ours. Your reality is bigger than a few pixels. The first thing to realize is that your struggle with self-worth does not stem from the fact of your natural inferiority. Rather, it's a product of an unhealthy habit of comparing our entire complex, nuanced, flawed existence with a shallow, unreal version of what a human life should be. Social media takes this normal human tendency and turbocharges it. Instead, dare to challenge the validity of these comparisons. We must train ourselves to realize that what we are shown on social media is not reality. It is an edited version of what someone else wishes to convey, or what they feel they have to convey to others. Consider the social media phenomenon, where individuals share picture-perfect moments of their lives. Imagine scrolling through your feed and coming across a friend's glamorous vacation photos in a tropical paradise. Crystal clear waters, pristine beaches, and radiant smiles paint a seemingly flawless picture. It's natural to feel a pang of envy and question the worthiness of your own life. Yet, by taking Furtick's advice to heart, you'll begin to realize that these snapshots omit the less glamorous aspects: long flights, delayed flights, and sunburns that weren't Instagram-worthy. Take it further and realize that this person may have gone to all the work of creating this illusion in the first place because they felt unworthy in themselves. Consider that what you are viewing is the manifestation of their insecurity. When you start to question these images, rather than passively consume them, you can begin to short-circuit the knee-jerk responses you might have. Those responses that have you feeling ugly, unlovable, boring, poor, or whatever it is. Chapter 45. You can tell a different story. For soon the body is discarded. Then what does it feel? A useless log of wood, it lies on the ground. Then what does it know? Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own thoughts unguarded, but once mastered, no one can help you as much, not even your father or your mother. Buddha. Do you have a memory of something someone told you once? Something that you couldn't forget? Maybe it's a careless remark that lingers in your mind, a comment seared into your consciousness that you've been carrying for years. It's fascinating how a mere string of words can wield such tremendous power over our emotions. Our belief in these words can shape our entire lives, the choices we make, and how we see ourselves. We've all been there. Perhaps this is what the Buddha meant when he explained that our own thoughts, when unguarded, can be more harmful than any external force. If someone insulted us 10 years ago, we can hurt ourselves more than they ever could by simply holding on to that insult, letting it fester in us. However, the good news is that if the mind is this powerful, it can also be a formidable tool for growth, understanding, and compassion. What if I told you that the damage inflicted upon us by these external stimuli is not inherently in their words or actions? Instead, it lies in our interpretation and response to them. Right now, in this moment, you possess the capacity to reshape how these external factors impact your inner world. If we believe the words of the Buddha, learning how to do so means we can heal ourselves more than anyone or anything else ever could. That's a big deal. Recognizing our mind's interpretations. It's not the actions or words of others that directly harm us, but rather the meaning our minds make of them. In essence, we're never at the mercy of the world's emotional roller coaster. We're the ones manning the control panel, even if sometimes we forget that we are. Now, let me introduce you to Tristan, a childhood friend who, at a young age, became a self-proclaimed geek. In elementary school, while others were mastering the art of trading lunchbox snacks, Tristan was busy unraveling the mysteries of the universe. His passion for science and math made him the subject of relentless teasing, earning him the dubious honor of being called a brain by his classmates. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of letting the teasing pierce his emotional armor, Tristan realized that his classmates' jabs said more about their own insecurities than they did about him as a person. In fact, he took their taunts and decided they were compliments, He was proud to be who he was, and he never accepted his bullies' labels. Chapter 46. How are your perceptions serving you? If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius and the Buddha probably would have agreed on a few things, the above quote being proof that they both understood that life happens in the interpretation and not in the thing itself. Is your perception of the world helping or hindering you? How accurate are your estimates of the world around you? How are you distorting reality? If you've never really considered whether your appraisals could potentially be inaccurate, there's a good chance they are. Evaluating your estimations. Have you heard the saying, "Don't believe everything you read"? Well, let's also remind ourselves not to believe everything we think. Just because you think something, and just because that thought is automatic and feels like the truth, it doesn't necessarily mean it is. Have you ever encountered someone who believes something plainly false and caused themselves distress in the process? Well, entertain the fact that that person could be you. And the only way to find out if your estimations are accurate is to question them. Let's say you've just received an unexpected critique at work. Initially, you may feel a surge of anger or disappointment, interpreting this feedback as a personal attack on your competence. Maybe they're out to get you. Maybe they're jealous. Or maybe they're just a jerk. It's unfair. You did nothing wrong, etc. But reflect on your initial estimation of the situation. Slow down and look at all these thoughts and feelings popping up into your head. Some of them will be 100% wrong, some 100% right, and most will be somewhere in between. The important thing is to suspend judgment and step back to look at things more objectively. This isn't fair. I don't deserve it. Challenge the validity of this estimation. Is it conceivable that the critique is a nudge to help you grow, rather than a strike against your value? Is it really completely unreasonable to expect that you would get critical feedback at some point in your career? Is it really true that everyone who points out your weaknesses is always wrong? And even if the feedback is not accurate or completely unwarranted, is it really worth getting upset about? They must think I'm an idiot. Maybe they're fed up with me. Again, put this thought and feeling on trial and cross-examine it. Is it really true that getting negative feedback means that people think you're an idiot? Perhaps they're just doing their jobs. Are there other possible explanations that you're not considering? Is there any evidence for this thought? Or might a more moderate alternative better fit the solution? As you muse on this, explore alternative perspectives or viewpoints. Scrutinize. Chapter 47. Enough is really enough. If what you have seems insufficient to you, then, though you possess the world, you will yet be miserable. Seneca. Possessing the world may seem like the ultimate dream, a life adorned with riches and luxuries beyond measure. Yet according to Seneca, even having all this would amount to nothing if you possessed it with an ungrateful and dissatisfied heart, as if the universe's bounty still somehow fell short. Imagine someone says, "Life is hard. It would be so much better if I had $10,000 more." But There's someone out there just like them who actually has those $10,000. They're not happy either, of course, saying to themselves, life is pretty difficult. I bet an extra $100,000 would make a real difference to me. You guessed it. Someone else out there has that extra $100,000, and they're just as dissatisfied. It really goes on forever till you arrive at the world's most obscenely wealthy billionaires, those who would struggle to even spend what they have in a single human lifetime. And they tell themselves regularly, well, life is kind of tough. If only... Appreciating yourself. The wisdom of Seneca's quote highlights a truth about human nature and the pursuit of happiness. Instead of constantly comparing yourself to others or thinking about what you lack, cultivate an appreciation for what you do have. Every person's journey is unique, and drawing comparisons between your own life and that of others often leads to feelings of inadequacy and discontentment. What's more, remember that you can never really get enough of what you don't actually need. Be humble, moderate your expectations, and realize that dissatisfaction is just a few steps away from anxiety and depression. There will always be someone who appears to have more wealth, success, or happiness. The more we indulge in comparisons, the more we tend to focus on what we lack, rather than appreciating the blessings and accomplishments we already possess. And just like that, we put ourselves on a rat wheel, ensuring that we can never reach some ideal endpoint once and for all. Consider an example. Sarah has been on the hedonic treadmill for many years now. She works hard to achieve multiple pay raises and job promotions, but every time she advances, she simply ramps up her lifestyle to match and spends even more, so that no matter how much she ever earns, she always has her eye on something more expensive. 2 decades into her career, she's living in a beautiful house, crammed full of expensive things, and she's unable to derive a single ounce of pleasure from any of it. What made her happy years ago seems to mean nothing to her now. In her 20s, she thought that her dream life meant 2 cars, nice clothes, and a few amazing vacations. She has all that now, and yet somehow it's not enough. Chapter 48. Resilience comes from purpose. If we possess a why of life, we put up with almost any how. Friedrich Nietzsche. What drives you? What speaks to your soul? What is your purpose? Understanding your why isn't merely an exercise in self-discovery. It's a source of motivation and clarity in moments of confusion. Understanding your purpose fuels your determination to persevere, even in the face of doubt and anxiety. In my own life, my why resides in the potency of words and the desire to share knowledge. It's the understanding that my words can inspire and educate others that propels me forward, even when confronted with formidable challenges. Your why becomes a lighthouse, expertly guiding your ship safely through turbulent seas. When you focus on your purpose, it anchors you in the midst of life's storms, imparting profound direction and unyielding motivation. What do you most care about? What would you choose to do if you had only 1 day left on this earth? What would you be willing to die for? Answer these questions, and you may get closer to your personal set of values and motivations. For some people, it will be harmonious and loving connections with their family. For others, it will be the search for wisdom. And still others, it will be adventure, exploration, and the thrill of the unknown. You may value independence or interdependence. You may seek out truth, or beauty may be more your thing. The important thing is that nobody can decide what your why is for you. That is work you do on your own, and work you will likely have to revisit throughout your life. Yes, your big why can change. Forging your resilience anchor. Imagine a symbol or mantra that packs the punch of a motivational coach, reminding you of your indomitable spirit and your unrelenting drive to conquer challenges. Think of your resilience anchor as the trusty sidekick on your quest to being present and shedding the heavy cloak of anxiety and overthinking. It's your personal cheerleader, firmly rooted in the fertile soil of your purpose. For me, this anchor came in the form of a simple yet profound mantra: embrace the moment. It's like a gentle tap on the shoulder, nudging me to stay firmly planted in the here and now, and to let go of the baggage of an uncertain future. If your purpose revolves around saving the environment, for example, your resilience anchor could be an image of a vibrant, thriving tree. This arboreal emblem serves as a potent reminder of your commitment to Mother Earth. When life's tempests blow your way, gazing upon this image is like a sip of resilience-infused herbal tea. It rejuvenates your spirit and reinforces your determination to overcome obstacles for the greater good. Remember, this concept isn't about mere positive thinking. It's about strapping on. Chapter 49. Make friends with your demons. First, you'd discover that the monster was not real. You'd realize that it was just an illusion, that you never had anything to fear in the first place. You'd see that the monster had no teeth. This would be an incredible triumph. David D. Burns. Do you remember those childhood days when we would eagerly sit in front of the television watching our favorite cartoons? Back then, the monsters on the screen, whether they were lurking under beds or hiding in closets, held a peculiar fascination for us. We'd watch with a mix of fear and curiosity, knowing that these imaginary creatures couldn't harm us. Fast forward to adulthood, and we find ourselves facing a different kind of monster, our own mind monsters. These are the fears, anxieties, and challenges that haunt our thoughts, and can often feel just as daunting as the fictional creatures we watched on TV. In this journey of confronting your inner monsters, we can draw inspiration from David D. Burns's thought-provoking quote, which hints that these adult mind monsters may not be as formidable as they seem. Much like the monsters in our childhood cartoons, they may turn out to have no teeth and be mere illusions. Getting to know your monster. Burns's philosophy provides a roadmap for conquering these inner monsters, and the first tip is to identify them with precision. It's like taking inventory of the creatures lurking within the labyrinth of your psyche. This process involves a conscious effort to recognize the specific fear, anxiety, or challenge that is causing you distress. It's about giving shape and form to the nebulous specters that haunt your thoughts. Imagine, for instance, that you find yourself experiencing discomfort and anxiety in social situations. The mere thought of meeting new people or attending social events sends your heart racing and palms sweating. In this scenario, social anxiety becomes your monster. It's that relentless fear that you might say something embarrassing, that others will scrutinize your every move, or that you'll find yourself awkwardly isolated in a crowded room. Let me share the story of someone I know, Brad, who grappled with social anxiety for years. He often turned down invitations to gatherings, fearing the judgment of others and the prospect of stumbling through conversations. His monster was a shadowy presence that followed him, casting doubt and discomfort wherever he went. But then Brad decided it was time to confront this particular demon. Brad began the process by clearly defining his social anxiety. He named it, painted a vivid mental picture, and then gave it an amusing nickname. By personifying his fear in this way, he transformed it from an abstract, overwhelming force into something tangible, a mischievous character he could engage with. This shift in perspective marked the beginning of his journey toward understanding and, ultimately, taming his monster. Chapter 50. Have a growth mindset. Having a fixed mindset, the unwavering belief that your abilities and intelligence are etched in stone, can sometimes make life feel like a never-ending pop quiz you haven't studied for. And if you're navigating the twists and turns of life, juggling work, relationships, and the occasional existential crisis, that pop quiz feeling can easily evolve into full-blown anxiety. In contrast, the growth mindset is the belief that talents aren't handed out like golden tickets, but can actually be cultivated through good old sweat and elbow grease. Tao Weidong and their team decided to look more closely at the influence of growth mindset on mental health. The results? Individuals who embraced a growth mindset reported significantly fewer mental health issues and lower levels of stress due to life events than their fixed mindset counterparts. Uncovering a setbacks lesson. One powerful strategy emerges from the heart of the growth mindset philosophy. Whenever you encounter a challenge, setback, or difficult situation, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? It's a deceptively simple question, but its impact is profound. This question works as a mental pivot, redirecting your focus from the daunting negative aspects of a situation toward the untapped opportunities for personal growth and improvement. Imagine life as a journey filled with a series of doors, some leading to sunshine, while others hide challenges behind them. When you encounter a closed door, it's natural to feel frustrated, even anxious. This is where the growth mindset comes in. Instead of banging your head against that closed door, the growth mindset hands you a key with the words, "What can I learn from this?" engraved on it. So you insert the key, turn it, and voila, the door swings open. Inside, you find a room filled with valuable lessons and insights, like treasures waiting to be discovered. The growth mindset doesn't magically make your problems disappear, but it equips you with the lantern to navigate the darkest corners of your challenges, illuminating the path forward with newfound wisdom. But let's say, for instance, you've encountered a professional setback at work. Your fixed mindset might lead you to ruminate on how you're not cut out for your job or how you're destined for failure. But with the growth mindset question in hand, you approach it differently. You reflect on what led to the setback, what skills you might need to improve, and how this experience can be a stepping stone to future success. In this way, you not only reduce anxiety about the setback, but also actively harness it as a catalyst for self-improvement. Embracing the discomfort zone. And let me ask you something. How long have you been in your comfort zone? Well, it's that cozy, well-worn space where life feels safe, predictable, and, comfortable. It's a place we all retreat to at times, like a haven from the storms of uncertainty and change. Chapter 51. Avoid choice paralysis. The modern world can sometimes feel like an endless, giant menu. From the moment we wake up and ponder our breakfast choices to the multitude of decisions we make throughout the day, the sheer number of options can be overwhelming. It's a paradox of abundance that, while it promises more freedom, often leaves us trapped in the quagmire of choice. Researchers from Columbia University have unearthed a curious phenomenon that challenges our conventional wisdom about choice and its impact on our well-being, particularly in the context of anxiety. According to these researchers, while we typically associate personal choice with positive